Chapter 212. Looking for the shopkeeper 900 taels. There was actually 900 taels of silver. This white sugar was too profitable. Lu Wei swallowed his saliva. In fact, he had only estimated 500 taels in his heart at the beginning. He had calculated wrongly. Woo. However, this 900 taels of silver had to deduct the cost to be what she had earned today. Still, the cost was not high at all. Yundong also secretly took a deep breath. Her eyes lit up. She was finally a millionaire. If she continued to work hard, she would become a billionaire. With money, Yundong became much more generous. She gave 2 taels to everyone present. It's been hard on everyone today. Shao Qingyuan didn't even look at it and directly put away the silver. The 4 members of the Tong family held the silver and beamed with joy. Madame Yang thought for a moment and took a bite. Realizing that it was real, she handed it to Yundong very preciously. Keep it. It won't be lost. Yundong took it. All right. Let me know what you want to buy later. Yunshu stared at the silver in his hand. It was 2 taels. This was 2 taels, a whole 2 taels of silver. The little guy chuckled and put the silver into a small bag in his bag. Yes, he would save it for now. In the future, if his family needed it urgently, he would hand it to his eldest sister. Yunka tilted her head and stared at the silver. She did not know much about 2 taels of silver and did not even know what to buy. She gave it to Yundong. I'll give it to eldest sister. Lu Wei held the silver like a fool. He clearly had more than 1,000 taels of silver with him, but it was not as precious as these 2 taels of silver. He always felt that this was earned through his own hard work. The meaning was different. He put the silver aside and looked at Yundong with sparkling eyes. Girl, how about I be your shopkeeper? In the future, give me 2 taels of silver a day. Every day? That was 60 taels of silver a month. Which shopkeeper would be so expensive? He was robbing money. Yundong smiled insincerely and said, No, you're the eldest young master of the Lu family. You have millions of assets waiting for you to inherit. How can I trouble you with just 2 taels of silver? It's too much of a waste of your talent. It's all right. I don't mind the small amount of money. Anyway, I don't rely on that bit of salary to live. Lu Wei waved his hand, looking very nonchalant. Shao Qingyuan glanced at him. We despise you. Yundong nodded vigorously. Indeed, someone who spoke the truth needed to wake up this wastrel. Lu Wei almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Why? Your price is too high. We can't afford it. How is it high? Look at how much money you earned in a day. 2 taels of silver is not even a fraction. Forget it, 1 tael is fine. Shao Qingyuan ignored him. He turned to Yundong and said, But the shop is indeed short of a shopkeeper and clerks. We can't let you look after the shop every day. Unfortunately, my father isn't around. Dajiang had once been an accountant in a restaurant and had some experience. He was actually the most suitable candidate. Lu Wei stomped his feet at the side. I already said that I'll be the shopkeeper. Shao Qingyuan thought for a moment and said, I have a suitable candidate. Yundong's eyes lit up. Who? Me! Lu Wei shouted. You'll regret it if you don't invite me. I have a lot of connections in this county. Shao Qingyuan and Yundong looked at each other and gave the Tong brothers a look at the same time. The 2 of them quickly dragged Lu Wei away. Chapter 213. Deal. Only then did the 2 of them calm down. Shao Qingyuan said, I used to work for an escort agency in town. He had no land in Yongfu village. Other than hunting in the mountains, he went to the county city or prefectural city to do short-term work. That escort agency was not big, and the escorts were only short distance. Most of them were between the prefectural city and the county city. The furthest was between the 2 neighboring prefectural cities. Shao Qingyuan was quite skilled. The head of the escort company really wanted him to stay in the escort company, but he didn't agree. However, he had also helped with 2 short-range escorts and everyone in the escort company knew him. Chief Escort has an elder brother. He used to be the shopkeeper of a large family in the prefectural city. Later on, that old master passed away. His 2 sons fought to the death. In the end, not only did the family collapse, but that shop was also sold. Uncle Zhong returned to the county city. He has nothing to do now. Gu Yundong lowered her eyes and thought for a while. Is this person reliable? Reliable, he replied without hesitation. Gu Yundong nodded. All right, if you say he's reliable, then he's reliable. Then it's him. Shao Qingyuan saw that she trusted him without hesitation, and his heart suddenly swelled. He secretly took a deep breath. I'll go find him now. Okay. It was still early, and the escort agency was not far from here. Shao Qingyuan returned not long after he left. Uncle Zhong was not very old. He looked to be in his 40s and looked very energetic. His family ran an escort agency, and it seemed that he had also practiced martial arts. This was even better. She wasn't afraid of people causing trouble. Zhang Gang had been a shopkeeper for more than 10 years and was a steady person. When he saw that his boss was a little girl in her teens, he was only surprised for a moment. He did not look down on her. Instead, he said with admiration, Qing'an told me about it on the way. I really didn't expect such a rare thing to exist in this world. My boss is really capable. He paused for a moment and said, but you might not know that I used to be a shopkeeper in a cloth shop. The things I sold were different, and I might not be able to meet your requirements. If you're worried, you can let me try to be a shopkeeper for half a month first. If you're not satisfied, feel free to change me. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. He knew about the probation period. It won't take half a month. 3 days will be enough. As the saying goes, 1 round is all it takes. Uncle Zhang used to be the shopkeeper of the cloth shop. In 3 days, you will definitely be proficient in being the shopkeeper of Gus. I will come to Gus for the next 3 days. If there's anything you need to know about the shop, you can just ask me. Zhang Gang smiled. The boss thinks highly of me. I, Zhang Gang, will definitely not let you down. As for the monthly salary, it's temporarily set at 5 taels of silver. If you do it well, I will increase it. She had some understanding. The prices and wages in the county city were not comparable to the prefectural city. Most of the shopkeepers here only had 3 to 4 taels of silver a month. Of course, a big restaurant like the Liu family's was different. However, if she did well, she would not treat the shopkeeper badly. Zhang Gang immediately nodded. All right. When he was a shopkeeper in the prefectural city, he only earned 5 taels a month. He had worked for many years before raising it by 2 taels. After agreeing on the time for work the next day, Zhang Gang went back. Now that the shopkeeper had been confirmed, she still needed a waiter. This waiter did not necessarily need to be experienced. With Zhang Gang leading him, it was not a big problem to help move the goods in the shop and entertain the customers. The most important thing was to be clever. At the mention of cleverness, a person flashed across Gu Yundong's mind. Chapter 214. Zhuangzi. Gu Yundong's mouth twitched at the thought of this person. However, after thinking about it, she still felt that he was the most suitable. Therefore, after returning to the village at night, she went straight to the Shi family. When the parents of the Shi family saw her coming, they were stunned for a moment, thinking that she was looking for them for the matter in the field. Unexpectedly, Gu Yundong was looking for Zhuangzi. Zhuangzi had never been at home, especially recently. He often left after eating in the morning with a few steamed buns and only returned when it was dark. Shi Dashan asked a few times, but he couldn't get anything out of him, so he let him be. In any case, ever since he stopped hanging out with Hu Liang, there had been no rumors of him sneaking around. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. She could roughly guess where Zhuangzi had gone. However, before she could look for him, Lan Huar said, I know where my brother is. They'll go look for him. With that, Lan Huar ran off. Gu Yundong could only continue to wait at the Shi residence. Sure enough, not long after, Zhuangzi ran back while panting. Miss Gu, why are you looking for me? He had been working hard recently. Although Gu Yundong had not told him to keep an eye on Zhao Dafa, he felt that Madame Fong and Zhao Dafa must have something going on. He wanted to find out about their affair no matter what. Therefore, other than spying on Madame Fong and her daughter, he also had to visit Zhao Dafa from time to time. He was so busy that he didn't even have time to eat. But damn it, the two of them had only met once. He didn't know if it was because they had fallen out last time, but there had been no movement since then. Zhuangzi was very worried. If he had known, he would have called the entire village over the last time he saw them alone. He had missed an opportunity. Recently, he had been wondering if he should matchmake them and make them reconcile. Only then could he catch them in the act. Yundong had no idea what he was thinking. She only felt that Zhuangzi seemed to have lost some weight and looked more haggard. It seemed that he was indeed very professional and did his best to do what she instructed him to do. She was relieved. Yundong coughed lightly. It's like this, Zhuangzi. I opened a shop in the county city and I want to find a smart shop assistant. Are you willing to go? What? Not only Zhuangzi, but the other 3 members of the Shi family widened their eyes. Especially Xian'er and his wife. Their faces were filled with disbelief. They had never thought that their son, who was always away from home and hated by the entire village, would one day be personally invited to be a shop assistant. Zhuangzi was also stunned. He blinked and wondered if he had heard wrongly. I've been invited to work as a shop assistant? How could a rotten person like him, who couldn't even be a short-term worker when he went to town, become a shop assistant? For some reason, he felt like crying. Zhuangzi turned around abruptly and wiped his face forcefully with his sleeve. Yundong laughed. What's wrong? Are you unwilling? Yes, of course. Zhuangzi immediately turned around. His eyes were still a little red, but he hurriedly nodded. The Shi couple and Lan Huar nodded vigorously. He's willing. Well, the salary is 1 tael a month for the time being. If you do well, we will increase it. If you agree, you can follow me to the county tomorrow. There's a courtyard there that you can stay in. You can come back if you want. If it's too late and you're too tired, you can stay in the shop. Zhuangzi nodded vigorously. 1 tael of silver. He had heard that the shop assistants in the workshop only earned 500 copper coins. Actually, he also wanted to go to the workshop, but Yundong wanted honest and reliable people. He admitted that he was not. Besides, he still had to keep an eye on Madame Fong and Zhao Dafa. At the thought of this, Zhuangzi suddenly reacted. Then Madame Fong. Chapter 215. 2 people he was most afraid of. Yundong interrupted him. No need. You can come early tomorrow. He had been watching Madame Fong and her daughter for almost a month. Other than asking Zhao Dafa to steal from her house, there was nothing else. Now that her house was guarded by the Tong family, she was not afraid that Madame Fong would find someone to sneak into their house. Besides, there was no reason to guard against thieves for 1,000 days. Her initial thought was to keep an eye on them for a month. Zhuangzi immediately agreed. After Yundong left, he reached out and slapped himself hard. Then, he asked his parents, Am I dreaming? It's not a dream. You can really become a worker in the county city. Xian'er's honest face was filled with excitement. He patted his shoulder heavily with his rough palm. He also nodded repeatedly. Her son was finally promising. 1 tael of silver a month. Your father and I also have a salary every month now. Now that you have something serious to do, you can get married soon. In the past, her poor son did not have a good reputation. He idled around all day and the matchmakers would take a detour when they saw him. Now, she could even imagine the scene of her hugging her grandson in the near future. Zhuangzi took a deep breath and looked at his parents. He suddenly realized that they were different from before. That's right. Ever since they helped the Gu family manage the orchard, the 2 of them had been in high spirits and full of energy. Now that he had work to do, their lives would get better in the future. In the end, he looked at Lan Huar and saw that her face was red and excited. He immediately smiled. Wait for me to save up your dowry. The next day, Zhuangzi changed into his best set of clothes and waited at the entrance of the Gu residence before dawn. When Yundong went out, she was almost shocked by the figure in the corner. She thought that Madame Fong had found someone to spy on her as soon as she asked Zhuangzi to come back. When she saw who it was, she wanted to kick him out. Zhuangzi chuckled. Miss Gu. No, boss, do we have to leave? Yundong asked Yunshu, who was also going to school. to get into the carriage before sizing him up. Then she frowned slightly. Although Zhuangzi was wearing the best clothes, there were still 2 patches on the corner of his shirt. This wouldn't do. The shop assistant was the face of the shop. If he wore patched clothes, others would think that she was abusing her employees and it would affect her reputation. It seemed that she had to think about the work clothes. She asked Zhuangzi to get into the carriage too. The latter shook his head and sat beside Father Tong. "I'll sit outside with the old man." Yundong did not try to persuade him anymore. Then, Zhuangzi watched as Shao Qingyuan came out of the Shao family's house. When he saw him sitting on the shaft of the carriage, the guy naturally entered the carriage. Zhuangzi's eyes widened and he shuddered violently. No, he couldn't be afraid. What was there to be afraid of? He hadn't offended Shao Qingyuan. Right, I heard that the workshop is half Shao Qingyuan, so he also has a share in this shop? Does that mean he's my boss too? The 2 people he was most afraid of were actually his bosses. How did he end up in such a situation? Why did he take things so hard? The carriage entered the county city. Yundong first sent her brother to school, then went to the clothing store and asked Zhuangzi to choose suitable clothes. Zhuangzi was extremely excited. Gift? I can choose anything? Shao Qingyuan's cold gaze shot at him. Zhuangzi suddenly shivered and felt a chill on his neck, as if he would be separated from his head at any time. He moved to the side weakly. Chapter 216. Uninvited guest Yundong glared at him. Dream on. Do you want to choose silk? Just choose something that looks clean, neat, warm, and without patches. Zhuangzi nodded, but he was still very happy. At least he had new clothes to wear. Seeing that he had gone to choose, Yundong said to Shao Qing'an, "Help shopkeeper Zhong choose a set too. Since Zhuangzi has been given work clothes, it doesn't make sense that the shopkeeper doesn't have them. See which one is suitable." Work clothes. Shao Qingyuan's expression softened. Yes. Yundong pointed at Zhuangzi. We can't let him wear those clothes to entertain the guests, right? Treat it as a benefit in our shop. Our shop? Shao Qingyuan's expression brightened. All right, I'll choose. The clothes given to the shopkeeper were definitely different from the shop assistants. Shao Qingyuan estimated Zhang figure and quickly chose a set for him. Zhuangzi returned very quickly. He was still a little apprehensive, but seeing that Yundong had no objections and readily paid, he became happy again. When they arrived at the shop, Zhang was already waiting there. Yundong asked him to take Zhuangzi to tidy up the counter while she went to the backyard and opened one of the rooms. After a while, she let them in to move the inventory here. Actually, there was no stock at all. She had just taken it out of her spatial storage. There was no one guarding the shop. How could she dare to leave it here? In the future, she planned to send someone to deliver it every day so her family might need to buy a mule cart. After arranging the goods, Yundong opened the door. The guests outside the door had arrived early. How could 5 caddies of white sugar be enough yesterday? This morning, they had sent the servants to buy it. Even some of the owners in the surrounding shops wanted it. After all, Zhang had many years of work experience. At first, he was not used to it, but after a while, he was at ease and quickly got to work. Zhuangzi was inexperienced, but he was indeed quite smart and full of energy. He worked very hard in his studies and welcomed people with a smile the entire day. Although the smile at the beginning made Yundong feel that it was very wretched. In addition, with Shao Qingyuan holding the fort, the order was still very stable today. Yundong knew that there would definitely be a lot of customers for white sugar during the first 3 days. Some people would repeatedly buy a few more kilograms or give them away or sell them in the prefectural city. Yundong could not care less. The amount she produced was limited, and it was only a small matter. The imperial court was the main force, and they did not care about her small amount of candy. After a busy day, Yundong was quite satisfied with Zhang and Zhuangzi. However, during lunch, she saw Zhuangzi take out 2 hard and cold pancakes from his pocket, and her eyebrows could not help but twitch. There was a kitchen in the backyard of the shop. Yundong could just let them use it. Surprisingly, Zhuangzi actually knew how to cook. Although it was average, he would not starve to death. Gu Yundong thought for a moment and gave them an extra 500 copper coins to buy the ingredients and cook for themselves. Could be considered free lunch. 500 copper coins was completely enough. Zhuangzi was extremely excited, and so was Zhang. He had originally asked his wife to deliver lunch to him every day. The next day was the Laba festival. Gu Yundong asked the Tong family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law to make a large pot of Laba porridge for the holiday. She also planned to go to the shop and stay for half a day before coming back. Zhang and Zhuangzi were basically fine. However, just as she was about to go home, an uninvited guest came to the shop. Chapter 217. Finally here it was Nanny Qian. She carried a basket with a smile. "This is Laba porridge. Young madam asked me to send it over. Miss Gu has just arrived in Fengkai County. You can try our local Laba porridge and see if it's any different from yours." Gu Yundong was a little surprised. Why did Madame Yao send her Laba porridge? However, Nanny Qian quickly resolved her doubts. Young madam said that she came to Gus with young master to celebrate Miss Gus opening a few days ago. She hit it off with Miss at first sight. Unfortunately, there were many guests that day and business was booming. Miss was busy, so our young madam didn't have the chance to talk to Mississippi. As Nanny Qian spoke, she took out an invitation. Seeing that Miss shop has stabilized over the past few days, young madam wants to invite Miss into the residence as a guest. Coincidentally, there's a plum garden in the Peng residence. At this time of the year, the plum blossoms are blooming. Young madam sent me over to send Miss an invitation. Please don't decline. "Ha?" Gu Yundong asked. "Guest? Invite her to the Peng residence to admire the plum blossoms? No. She didn't have any romantic cells in her. She was a vulgar person who only wanted to earn money every day and didn't have time to admire the flowers. She had no intention of interacting with Madame Yao." Gu Yundong wanted to refuse, but Nanny Qian seemed to have seen through her intentions and added, "Miss Gus' cousin, Gu Xian'er, also misses you quite a lot. It's just that it's not convenient for her to come out at will now. Miss Gu, you can go and visit her and catch up with her." Gu Yundong swallowed his words. She knew it. She hated it when these rich families beat around the bush. Couldn't you just use Gu Xian'er's name to look for her? Gu Yundong accepted the Laba porridge and invitation. "Your young madam is so sincere in inviting me. I'll definitely go. Thank you." Nanny Qian's mission was completed, and her smile became more sincere. "Then I'll go back first. Miss, no need to see me off." Gu Yundong smiled. Seeing that she had left, Zhuangzi came over. "Boss, our shop is too popular. Even the Peng family has sent you Laba porridge." He had truly felt the business of the past 2 days. If not for the purchase quota, their sugar might have been sold out the moment the shop opened. Gu Yundong held the invitation card in her hand and handed the Laba porridge to Zhuangzi. "Just nice, you can share this Laba porridge. For us to eat?" "Yeah." Zhuangzi couldn't wait to open the lid. His eyes lit up. The Laba porridge in Peng manner was indeed different. There were many ingredients such as river rice, white fruit, walnut kernels, chestnuts, red dates, longan, and so on. To Zhuangzi, it was even more sumptuous than the Spring Festival's food. Gu Yundong also glanced at it, then retracted her gaze and went back with the invitation. Zhuangzi immediately went to find bowls and chopsticks to share with Zhang. Yongfu village was very lively. The Laba festival was a day to worship ancestors and gods and pray for a bumper harvest and auspicious luck. Every family had more or less prepared Laba porridge. Even if the ingredients were not rich, it had to be done. The workshop was not on holiday, but the Laba porridge that Gu Yundong had asked the Tong family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law to cook in the morning was very sweet. She gave everyone in the workshop a big bowl to bring back. Everyone in the workshop looked at the full bowl of Laba porridge and their smiles never faded. As expected, working in the Gu family's workshop was simply too good. After eating the porridge, they worked even harder. Gu Yundong had been busy for 2 days and had almost forgotten the date she had agreed on with Madame Yao. Chapter 218. Going to the Peng residence again this morning, Gu Yundong instructed Shao Qing'an on some matters in his workshop and planned to go straight to the county city. Shao Qingyuan knew about Gu Xian'er's relationship with her and was worried. Gu Yundong laughed. I'm not afraid of her. I'll deal with whatever comes my way. It's fine if she knows her place, but if she really dares to approach me, I can teach her how to behave. With that, she was about to leave with Gu Yunshu. Unexpectedly, this little fellow ran straight to the Zhong family. Not long after, he mysteriously carried a huge bag out and climbed into the carriage. Gu Yundong was surprised. What are you bringing to school? The kid blinked, as if wondering if he should tell her. Gu Yundong sighed. You've grown up and have secrets with eldest sister. Sigh, I'm sad. With a whoosh, Gu Yunshu immediately tore open the bag and pushed it in front of her. Gu Yundong's heartbroken expression disappeared in a second. She lowered her head and picked up the school bag on the bag. She looked up at Gu Yunshu. The latter was still surprised by the speed at which his eldest sister's expression changed. He looked conflicted. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4? Are you very short of school bags? Gu Yunshu was taken aback and quickly shook her head. No. These are for the other classmates in my school. As he spoke, he covered his mouth and laughed. On the first day I went to school, the other students liked my school bag very much and asked me who made it and wanted to buy it. I asked Aunt for help. A school bag costs 2 copper coins. I'll give Aunt 90 copper coins and I'll collect some intermediate fees. I have 40 copper coins now. In the future, when eldest sister doesn't have enough money, I'll give everything to you. Gu Yundong's eyes widened. F***ck. He actually knew how to do business at such a young age? He knew how to collect the intermediate fee and save money for her? How could there be such a sensible child? Gu Yundong rubbed his little head fiercely. Gu Yunshu shook his head and thought that she was angry. He quickly explained, I told the teacher and he agreed. However, there are very few students in our school. Some students come from poor families, so they did not buy anything. These 4 people are very rich. And 1 don't charge much. They also gave me the fabric themselves. Aunt was very happy. I told Aunt not to tell you. Gu Yundong carried the child over. I'm not angry. I'm very happy with your actions. In the future, when you encounter such things, remember to tell the teacher in advance. Okay? The intermediate fee he charged was not high. Dong Xilan could earn 360 copper coins from 4 school bags, which was also a help to her family. When Gu Yunshu heard what she said, he hurriedly nodded. Yes, I told Andy to make it better. They're even sturdier than mine. I also asked my classmates for their opinions. I did everything I could. The 2 of them chatted as the carriage entered the county city. She sent Gu Yunshu to school. When she saw him running away happily with his bag, she turned the carriage around and went to the Peng residence. Nanny Qian was already waiting at the door. When she saw her, she quickly welcomed her. Miss, you're here. Please come in. Young madam has been talking about you since early in the morning and instructed me to wait here. As she spoke, she took a few more glances at her. Seeing that her hands were empty, she could not help but purse her lips. Those who came from the countryside were from the countryside. Who would come to visit without any gifts? She led Gu Yundong all the way to the Rui Garden. As expected, Madame Yao was waiting for her at the door, looking expectant and happy. Chapter 219. Madame Yao wants to get information. You're finally here. Come in quickly. Nanny Qian, pour tea for Miss Gu. Madame Yao pulled her hand affectionately and walked inside. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. It was too incongruous to be so enthusiastic. Nanny Qian poured a cup of tea for Gu Yundong. Madame Yao said, There's also white sugar in this tea that Miss Gu bought. It's sweet and suitable for us women to drink. Miss Gu, try it? Then, she shook her head. It's too distant to call you Miss Gu. Can I call you Yundong? You can call me Sister Yao too. How about that? Fine by me. Gu Yundong took a sip of tea. She did not really drink it. Strange people in unfamiliar places were strangely enthusiastic. She would be a fool if she dared to eat her food. The moment she raised her hand to drink the tea, she poured the tea into her space. When she put down the teacup, she nodded slightly. It's quite delicious. Madame Yao smiled and said, There are also pastries and preserved fruits here. Yundong don't stand on ceremony. As for me, the last time I saw you, I felt that you suited my taste. We're both straightforward people, so we'll definitely be able to talk together. It's also my master's fault. He knew you long ago and didn't think of introducing you to me. He didn't invite you over either. Last time at your house, he asked me to prepare a congratulatory gift. He didn't tell me in detail, causing me to not be able to get to know you sooner. Gu Yundong thought that Peng Zhongfei did not have the guts to speak nonsense. He would probably have nightmares at night. She was also polite. Young Master Peng is busy. Besides, I'm just a village girl. You're the madam of a big family. He was afraid that it'll offend you, right? No, he's very free. Madame Yao had a smile on her face. And he's full of praises for you. How could he be afraid that you would offend me? Praise? Peng Zhongfei must be crazy. Speaking of which, I still don't know how you met my master, Yundong. I asked my master, and he only said that he hadn't known you for long. Tell me, I'm quite curious. I've been married to my master for several years, but this is the first time I've seen him so protective of a little girl. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. Very good. This was a very interesting question. How did they meet? She thought for a moment and said, Actually, there's nothing special. It's just that I got to know young Master Lu first. One time, they were drinking tea together in the tea house and I happened to bump into him. Young Master Lu introduced me to him and we got to know each other. Young Master Peng is protecting me. Perhaps he thinks him pitiful? Is that so? Madame Yao lowered her eyes and took a sip of tea. She nodded. Our master is indeed quite close to young Master Lu, but it's rare to drink tea in a tea house. Didn't they always meet in a brothel? Gu Yundong glanced at her slightly tightened fingers from the corner of her eye and sighed secretly. If you don't believe me, don't ask me. She didn't know what Peng Zhongfei said to her, but it seemed that no matter how she responded, it would make her unhappy. Madame Yao said a few more words to her before saying, Yundong, take a seat first. I'm going to change. They'll be back in a while. When the time comes, we'll go to the plum garden to see the plum blossoms. Okay. Gu Yundong watched her leave with a smile. Madame Yao went out, and Nanny Qian followed behind. As soon as the two of them left the Rui garden, Madame Yao's expression changed. She's just a country girl. She's quite pretentious. She even stammered when I asked her questions. It's obvious that she has something on her mind. Madame Yao stood outside the courtyard and glared inside. Chapter 220. Gu Xian'er's plan. Nanny Qian quickly comforted her. Young madam, don't lower yourself to her level. She's unruly and doesn't know anything. Humph. I think she's very smug. I said that master was protecting her, and she shamelessly admitted it. Pitiful? Concubine Xia also said that she was pitiful back then, but in the end, she was brought into the residence by young master. Is she hinting to me that she will enter the residence one day? Nanny Qian nodded repeatedly and echoed. Her thoughts were seen through by young madame at a glance. Madame Yao was furious. In the past, there was a concubine Xia who would beat around the bush and refuse to speak honestly. In the end, she turned around and complained to her master. This Gu Yundong was the same as concubine Xia. They were not good people. I asked her how she got to know master. She even deliberately mentioned young Master Lu to suppress me. She's very smug about knowing young Master Lu. The more Madame Yao spoke, the angrier she became. She took 2 deep breaths before calming down. Nanny Qian did not dare to speak. Madame Yao slowly calmed down and asked softly, Young madam, what should we do next? Then where is Gu Xian'er? Over by the plum gardens. Madame Yao narrowed her eyes slightly. Have you found out what Gu Xian'er wants to do? At the mention of this, Nanny Qian could not help but sneer. She's stupid and poisonous. She found the scar-faced servant in the residence who poured the night utensils and wanted that servant to break that Gu girl's body and make the two of them a couple. Nanny Qian had been keeping an eye on Gu Xian'er for the past few days because she wanted to know her plan. She didn't expect that, after thinking about it, the girl would come up with such a bad idea. She didn't even think about it. If young master really valued the Gu girl, he would definitely investigate what happened in the residence. The first person to be punished would be Xian'er. Those who came from the countryside were from the countryside. Even after staying in the residence for a few months, they were still like this. Except, "Young madam, will this matter implicate you?" Madame Yao said nonchalantly. "I only invited Yundong over as a guest. It was the two sisters who had a conflict. The one who committed the crime will be Xian'er. What has it got to do with me? At most, he'll be reprimanded by master. Would he punish me for a broken girl?" With that, Madame Yao returned to the Rui garden. When she saw Yundong sitting there quietly, she immediately smiled. "Sister Yundong, you've waited for a long time. Let's go. The plum garden is over there and not far away. It's a good season for plum blossoms to bloom. The scenery is extremely beautiful." Yundong followed her to the plum garden and indeed saw Xian'er there. Seeing this, Madame Yao smiled and said, "I heard that the two of you are cousins. You've been separated for so long, so you must have a lot to talk about. Why don't you take a walk in the plum garden? I won't disturb you anymore. You'll go over there and pick a few plum blossoms." Xian'er was about to agree, but Yundong shook her head and said, "No need. Sister Yao probably doesn't know. Although she and I are cousins, our relationship has never been good. So there's nothing much to say. You'll go pick plum blossoms with Sister Yao. I wonder if it's convenient for me to bring a few back." Xian'er. Madame Yao was speechless. Nanny Qian was also speechless. However, Yundong was the first to walk into the garden. She looked slightly happy. "Why do I have to listen to you? Do I have to jump down obediently even though I know it's a trap?" Madame Yao frowned deeply. If Yundong was not alone with Xian'er, how could they fight? Xian'er was furious. She had already made arrangements. Why couldn't Yundong be more obedient? Chapter 221. Peng Zhong is here. The four of them had different thoughts and could only walk into the plum garden together. Yundong quite liked this place. The Peng family was indeed rich and imposing. They had actually opened up such a large plum garden. In the future, when she had money, she would also get a plum garden or peach blossom forest. It would definitely be very comfortable. Madame Yao was not in the mood to admire the flowers behind her. From the corner of her eye, she saw Xian'er, who was far behind. She could not help but feel angry. What a useless thing. As she was thinking, she suddenly saw her maid, Zhenzhu, rush over from behind. She did not look too good. Madame Yao stopped in her tracks. Zhenzhu whispered into her ear, "Young madam, young master heard that Miss Gu was here and insisted on coming over. We couldn't stop him." Madame Yao's expression suddenly turned ugly. "Didn't you say that he left early in the morning? He just came back." Zhenzhu lowered her voice. When Miss Gu came over, she happened to be seen by a servant in young master's courtyard. Young master immediately knew when he returned. He didn't even return to the courtyard and came straight here. Madame Yao glanced at Yundong with a dark expression. Master indeed treated her differently. She secretly took a deep breath, squeezed out a smile and said to Yundong, "Sister Yundong, master is here. He'll go and say a few words. He'll be back soon." "Peng Zhongfei is here?" Before Yundong could reply, Madame Yao had already left in a hurry. After a while, the sound of voices could be heard. It was not far away, and one could vaguely hear Peng Zhongfei's raised pitch. Why did it sound like they were about to quarrel? Yundong thought about it and did not go over. She waited quietly for a moment. On the other side, Madame Yao almost quarreled with Peng Zhongfei. As soon as she left the plum garden, she saw her master standing in the pavilion and looking over. She tried her best to suppress the anger in her heart and squeezed out a smile to welcome him. When Peng Zhongfei saw that she was alone, he frowned and asked, "Where's the Gu girl? Didn't they say she was here?" Madame Yao closed her eyes slightly and reminded herself that her master had always been like this. She was already used to it. "Master, don't scare my esteemed guest. Look at how travel-worn you are. You should go back and tidy up first. Sister Yundong will be having lunch here. If you have anything to say it later." Peng Zhongfei did not want to wait. He happened to have something urgent to talk to Gu Yundong at the moment and did not have the patience to return to his courtyard. Besides, wasn't he quite neat and clean? Hence, he waved his hand and said to Madame Yao, "Since the Gu family's girl is having lunch at home, go tell the kitchen to make some delicious food. Draft the menu yourself. I have something to discuss with the Gu family's girl." Madame Yao could not hold the smile on her face at all. Just as she was about to retort, Nanny Qian suddenly tugged at her. "Young madam, young master must have something to discuss with Shopkeeper Gu. Let's get the kitchen to make a few dishes from Shopkeeper Gu's hometown for the guests to try." "That's right. Go ahead." Peng Zhongfei waved his hand. Madame Yao received Nanny Qian's signal and could only leave the plum garden with her hand in hers. As soon as she went out, she said unhappily, "Why did you ask me to come out? They're left alone." "Young madam, isn't this just nice? Let's keep Gu Xian'er here too. We'll find an excuse to lure young master out later so that Gu Xian'er can make a move. In that case, if anything happens to Gu Yundong, young master can't blame you." Madame Yao thought about it and agreed. If something happened to Gu Yundong right under master's nose, would master blame her for not entertaining the guest well? Chapter 222. Gu Xian'er takes action. Madame Yao smiled and asked Jinju to come over. She instructed her in a low voice, "Go and find Xian'er, who is by Concubine Xia's side. Tell her to tell Concubine Xia about master and Gu Yundong being alone in the plum garden." "Young madam, you're killing 3 birds with 1 stone." Nanny Qian smiled until the wrinkles on her face moved. Madame Yao took a handkerchief and laughed softly. "Let's go to the kitchen and prepare a feast to entertain the esteemed guest according to master's instructions." "Yes." The master and servant walked further and further away. As for Gu Yundong, she walked out of the forest just as Madame Yao and Peng Zhongfei's conversation ended. Unfortunately, she was still a step too late. There was no sign of Madame Yao outside. There was only Peng Zhongfei, whose eyes lit up when he saw her. Gu Yundong secretly held his forehead. "Where's your wife?" "Oh, I sent her to the kitchen to arrange the dishes. I have something to discuss with you. She's a hindrance." Gu Yundong was speechless. Damn, this person's eek must be negative. No wonder Madame Yao looked at him as if he was an enemy. It was simply because this person had it coming. He was shameless, but she still wanted her reputation. It was one thing to have a scandal with others, but with Peng Zhongfei? No, she didn't want to. He had no looks and no character. Gu Yundong turned around and left, completely ignoring him. However, Peng Zhongfei really had something on and followed behind her. "Don't leave. I want to talk to you about the workshop." Gu Yundong stopped in her tracks. Forget it. If she wanted to go out directly, she did not know which way to go. There were people coming and going outside the plum garden. There would be more rumors when they saw them. Madame Yao had already let them be alone. They had probably already decided in their hearts. She simply walked to the pavilion and sat down. Peng Zhongfei immediately sat opposite her. "I didn't have a chance to talk properly in your shop last time. There's a question I've been wanting to ask for a long time. When did you become so familiar with Lu Wei? Didn't you just meet for the first time in my residence last time?" Gu Yundong suddenly sat up straight. Was he suspecting what had happened last time? She looked up at Peng Zhongfei and met his sincere gaze. Then she confirmed that he was just really curious. Gu Yundong coughed lightly and said, "Didn't Lu Wei find someone to bring him into the mountains to hunt some time ago? The person he found happened to be my neighbor. After a while, we became familiar with each other." Peng Zhongfei nodded. This topic was over. "But did you really not collaborate with the Lu family in your sugar business?" "No." Peng Zhongfei leaned forward. "Then how about we cooperate?" Gu Yundong gave him a strange look. The Peng family should know who was taking the bulk of the sugar benefits now, right? How dare he say that? However, Peng Zhongfei was different from what she thought. "I heard that your workshop hasn't been built yet?" Gu Yundong was about to nod when she saw a figure walking over from the corner of her eye. She looked up and saw Gu Xian'er carrying 2 cups of tea over. Peng Zhongfei also saw it and was instantly dissatisfied. "Didn't I tell you all to go down?" Gu Xian'er lowered her head obediently. Young madam instructed this servant to serve young master and the esteemed guest well. This servant is just here to serve tea. Peng Zhongfei was a little thirsty, so he nodded. Gu Yundong saw that the colors of the 2 cups of tea were different. She thought for a moment and asked, "What tea is this?" "This is Qihong. Young master's is pure tea." Gu Yundong swapped the 2 cups of tea. "I've never had pure before. Young master Peng, do you mind exchanging with me?" Chapter 223:1 Advise you to be a human. Peng Zhongfei didn't care at all. "What's wrong with that? You haven't drunk pure before. Coincidentally, I have it at home. I'll get the servants to prepare some for you later. You can take it back and drink it slowly." Gu Yundong thanked him and picked up the cup of pure tea. From the corner of her eye, she saw Gu Xian'er's motionless expression. Huh? She changed the tea, but Gu Xian'er was actually indifferent? Could it be that she was wrong and Gu Xian'er did not tamper with the tea? On the other side, Peng Zhongfei had already picked up Qihong and taken 2 sips. Gu Yundong also covered the tea with her sleeves and poured all the tea into the space. Gu Xian'er was satisfied and left with a smile. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes slightly. Gu Xian'er must have done something, but she did not seem to mind that the 2 of them had changed teacups. Then there was only one possibility. There was something wrong with both cups of tea. With Gu Xian'er's guts, she definitely wouldn't dare to harm Peng Zhongfei. There shouldn't be anything in the tea that would harm his life. Gu Yundong thought about it and felt that there was a 50% chance that she had added something arousing. If that was really the case, Gu Xian'er wanted something to happen between her and Peng Zhongfei. Then Peng Zhongfei might take her in. Coupled with Madame Yao's personality, she might be jealous and kill her out of jealousy. Gu Yundong was disgusted by Gu Xian'er's actions. However, there was one thing that she could not figure out. Did Madame Yao know about Gu Xian'er's plan? "What are you thinking about?" "I'm talking to you." Peng Zhongfei's irritable voice sounded in her ears. Gu Yundong suddenly came back to her senses. "Oh, are you asking me about the workshop?" "I'm listening. Our workshop has indeed not been built yet." "What do you mean by cooperating with me?" Peng Zhongfei was slightly satisfied. Then he said mysteriously, "Your workshop hasn't been built yet. It's just nice. I just got a workshop. It's not far from your village. How about I let you use it? But can you sell me more white sugar? I need at least 50 kilograms a day. 5 kilograms is too little. 50 kilograms. When he sold it, he did not know how much money he could earn. The higher-ups meant that they could not get involved in Gu Yundong's sugar business. But this was a normal transaction and was not against the rules. Gu Yundong exclaimed, "A workshop not far from our village? Did you buy it?" "That's right. I bought it. I spent 10 taels of silver and got something for free. I got a workshop and the owner gave his daughter to me as a concubine." His disdainful expression was very annoying. Gu Yundong could not help but frown. She felt that there was something wrong with his words. Looking at Peng Zhongfei's smug expression and thinking about how he wanted to forcefully occupy her blueprint, a bad feeling surged in her heart. "Don't tell me you bought it forcefully. Not only did you occupy his workshop, but you also want his daughter to be your concubine?" Peng Zhongfei snorted coldly. "It's that family who doesn't know what's good for them. I was polite before resorting to force. I came personally to propose with sincerity and even promised to give them 50 taels of silver. In the end, they actually dared to take out a broom and beat me out. Fine, they refused a toast only to drink a forfeit. Then don't blame me for being ruthless. F***CK. You're actually very proud of yourself for doing such a shameless thing? Indeed, a dog can't change its habit of eating shit." Gu Yundong resisted the urge to beat him to death and planned to persuade him to be human. In the end, a maid ran over and panted, "Young master, concubine Xia has fainted." Peng Zhongfei was speechless. He silently turned to look at Gu Yundong. "Why is it that every time you come to my house, something happens?" "He is probably telling you not to do evil." Gu Yundong pointed to the top of her head. "God is everywhere." Peng Zhongfei suddenly stood up. "I'll return the workshop and that concubine. Damn it, Luckily, I haven't touched her yet. Seeing that the maidservant was still standing at the side, he immediately shouted, "What are you waiting for? Get a doctor for the concubine." Chapter 224. Returning you a concubine, the maidservant trembled. She was a little afraid of Peng Zhongfei and quickly ran away. Peng Zhongfei took a deep breath and almost fell down the stairs. He thought that his guilty conscience had caused his limbs to go limp. However, after taking a few steps, even her eyes were a little blurry, and her breathing became hurried. When they reached the entrance of the plum garden, Xian'er ran out of nowhere. "Young master, are you all right? I'll help you back to your room to rest." Peng Zhongfei nodded randomly. He also realized that something was wrong with himself. However, he felt that this must be the old man in the sky punishing him. He was so afraid that he was about to die. He was about to lose his mind when he instructed his servant, "You quickly let the woman I just brought back home. Return the workshop and give some silver to her." The servant held his other side and hurriedly nodded. "I understand. Master, you look sick. Shall I call the doctor?" Xian'er instantly became nervous. Just as she was about to find an excuse, Peng Zhongfei waved his hand. "No need. I'm fine. Hurry up and do what I instructed. I'll be fine after resting for a while." Deep down, he felt that as long as he made up for her, he would be fine. "Hurry up and go. I don't need your help." The servant could only let go and instruct Xian'er to take good care of the young master before running away in a hurry. Xian'er heaved a sigh of relief and quickly brought Peng Zhongfei to a house near the plum garden. After placing him on the bed, she hurriedly returned to the plum garden. Yundong had actually seen the situation on Peng Zhongfei's side from afar. When she saw Xian'er return, her guess was 70 to 80% confirmed. She immediately leaned against the pillar at the side and panted, her fingers trembling slightly. Xian'er's face lit up. The plan had succeeded. Without another word, she helped Yundong up. Seeing that she wanted to push her away, she hurriedly said, "Cousin, I know you don't like me, but look at you. You can't even walk now. I'm afraid you're not feeling well. Let me help you to rest and get a doctor for you." As she spoke, she pulled her forward roughly. Yundong simply put her weight on Xian'er and let the girl take her to the house where Peng Zhongfei was previously. Seeing that Peng Zhongfei had already started to strip, Yundong completely understood Xian'er's plan. "Cousin, enjoy it slowly." Xian'er finally smiled sinisterly and threw Yundong onto the bed. However, just as she was about to turn around and leave, she suddenly felt a pain in her back shoulder. Then, her body slowly fell back and she lost consciousness. Yundong parted ways with her. She clapped her hands and tidied her clothes. Without even looking at Peng Zhongfei, who had already pounced on Xian'er, she strode out of the room. "Since it's enjoyment, I'll leave it to you. Didn't Peng Zhongfei lack a concubine? She had to return one to him. He should be grateful to her." She just didn't know how Xian'er would face Madame Yao's anger and Concubine Xia's methods after becoming the Peng family's concubine. Yundong returned to the plum garden and started to pluck the branches excitedly. When she came out with a large bouquet of plum blossoms, Madame Yao still had not returned. She smiled. She really did not understand what Madame Yao was thinking. However, just as she reached the pavilion, a short man in servant clothes with a scar on his face and a wretched smile walked over. Chapter 225. Madame Yao has fainted. Yundong had just frowned when she heard him ask, "You're Miss Gu, right? Are you feeling unwell? Do you feel very hot? Do you need my help?" As he spoke, he approached her. In the next moment, a stench assaulted her face. Yundong was so frightened that she immediately took a step back. "Stop right there. Don't come over. I'm fine. I'm not feeling unwell. I don't need your help." The man frowned. The scar on his face became more distorted because of this action, and he looked a little fierce. Yundong could not figure out where this person came from, but his question was very strange, as if he had guessed what would happen to her. Seeing that the man was coming forward again, Yundong immediately walked out of the plum garden. The man immediately chased after her. Because of the smell on his body, Yundong had no intention of fighting him. she broke into a run. Not far from the plum garden, she happened to see Madame Yao and her servant. However, the two of them were chatting and laughing. Instead of going to the plum garden, they went to the Rui garden. Yundong sneered and rushed in front of Madame Yao. "Young madam, what do you mean? Is this how you entertain guests? It's fine if you left on your own, but your master has also left. I can't even find him in the plum garden. I even met such a strange person. It's fine if he stinks, but his brain isn't clear, and his words are incoherent. Young madam, even if you don't like me, you don't have to disgust me like this. Since I'm not welcome here, I'll go back now. I didn't even want to come." Madame Yao was shocked by the person who rushed in front of her. Before she could see clearly, she was shocked by her crackling sound and took a step back. When she finally understood what Yundong meant, Yundong had already flicked her sleeves and left. Madame Yao blinked and looked at her departing back. Then, she looked at the servant with a scar on his face. At this moment, this person had already slipped away. Madame Yao suddenly came back to her senses and quickly pointed at Nanny Qian. "Quick! Get her back! I'll chase her now." Nanny Qian was also a little confused and chased after Yundong. Madame Yao paced around for a while before she looked puzzled. What's going on? Didn't Xian'er have a plan? Why did Yundong run out? Can't that servant even stop a person? Nanny Qian returned very quickly. With her old arms and legs, and she was already left behind. How could she catch up? When she ran out of the door, she was already gone. The more Madame Yao thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. She felt that something had vaguely exceeded her plan. She could not care less about Yundong and hurriedly said to Nanny Qian, "Let's go to the plum garden to take a look." Nanny Qian was also worried. The two of them went to the plum garden. Before they entered, they saw a few servants surrounding the house not far away and pointing at it. Madame Yao's eyelids twitched as she rushed over. The voice inside was too familiar. Who else could it be other than Peng Zhongfei? Madame Yao almost fainted. Nanny Qian quickly asked the other servants to leave and pushed open the door herself. The room was in a mess. When she saw the people inside clearly, Madame Yao couldn't breathe and really fainted. Nanny Qian panicked, and the Peng residents instantly fell into chaos. Yundong did not care about them. As soon as she left the Peng residence, she hurriedly got into the carriage and saw an unexpected person sitting inside. "Why are you here?" Chapter 226. Bringing news of the Peng residence. Shao Qingyuan couldn't be bothered to answer. However, when he saw her anxious expression, he immediately became nervous. "How are you? What could possibly happen to me? Then why did you—" It was as if someone was chasing after her. Yundong waved her hand. "I'm not the one in trouble. Don't worry, we'll just watch the show from now on." She didn't ask why Shao Qingyuan was here anymore. She felt that it might not be good to ask too much. However, it was undeniable that there was an indescribable joy in her heart. Seeing that she was indeed fine, Shao Qingyuan heaved a sigh of relief and changed the topic. "Do you want to go to the shop to take a look?" "Go ahead." She was in a good mood. Now that something like this had happened to Xian'er, it was no longer a problem. The carriage drove in the direction of the shop. Only then did she realize that the streets were much livelier than before. All kinds of New Year goods had already been placed. There was a folk song circulating in old Beijing. "Children, children, don't be greedy. After Laba it will be the New Year." It seemed like everyone was already preparing for the New Year. Yundong thought of the villagers in the workshop. She turned to Shao Qingyuan and said, "The workers can only take 5 days off for the New Year at most. I'm wondering if we should distribute some New Year goods to everyone. When we recruit people in the future, there will be more people who will sign up." Shao Qingyuan nodded. "When the time comes, we can buy some meat and some cloth. It's not good to give too much in the first year. It'll easily raise their appetite. If we give them too little in the future, they'll complain." Yundong thought so too. When she earned more money in the future, she would slowly increase the benefits. The two of them discussed how much they should pay as they spoke. When they arrived at the shop, they saw Zhuangzi sending a customer out with a smile. He looked energetic. It seemed that he had been very happy as a shop assistant recently. When Zhang saw her coming over, he consciously told her about the situation in the shop and showed her the account book. Gu Yundong's eyes gradually brightened when she saw that the business in the shop was thriving. With the money, she planned to look for Gu Dajiang after the new year and visit Qing'an Prefecture first. In the following days, Gu Yundong became even busier. This was the first year since she arrived at Yongfu village. It was also the first year since she left the old Gu family and took charge. It was also the first year when she had money to buy New Year goods. Gu Yundong had bought everything early and even asked Gu Yunshu to ask Qin Wenjing for a few couplets. She even made 2 sets of new clothes for her family, including Shao Qingyuan. Yes, the Tong family also each had a set. The entire family was overjoyed and worked even harder. Gu Yundong was very satisfied with the Tong family. She thought that her business would definitely expand in the future, so she had the intention to train the Tong family. Hence, after finishing her work and eating, she would get Gu Yunshu to teach everyone how to read. Gu Yunshu clearly liked being a little teacher. His adult-like behavior amused Gu Yundong. The Tong family was even more excited. It was very rare for servants to be able to read. Therefore, even though they had been busy for the entire day, they did not slack off at all when they studied. To Gu Yundong's surprise, the one who had learned the best was the second son of the Tong family, the man who had never remarried and had almost no presents. She did not go to the Peng residence again, but she had agreed to watch the show. Naturally, she asked someone to pay attention to the commotion there. The best candidate was Lu Wei. After all, he was also a gossip. On the 23rd day, Lu Wei lived up to her expectations and brought her the aftermath of what happened that day, as well as Gu Xian'er's end. Chapter 227. Gu Xian'er's end. It was said that after Madame Yao fainted that day, she was actually found to be pregnant. It was said that Gu Xian'er had become Peng Zhongfei's concubine. She was not Peng Zhongfei's type to begin with. He wanted a curvaceous woman. Gu Xian'er's figure was average. She grew up in the countryside in the past and had not grown well. She was so shriveled that no one was interested. Moreover, her face was not outstanding. At the very least, although Gu Yundong's figure did not meet his standards, her face was good-looking. However, Gu Xian'er didn't have anything and didn't seem very smart. Peng Zhongfei despised her very much. He didn't even plan to give her the identity of a concubine. In any case, he was only sleeping with a maid. He did not sleep with just one maid in the residence. Did he have to be responsible for every one of them? Peng Zhongfei was a scumbag. He would abandon any girl he had slept with. However, Gu Xian'er was indignant. She knew that there was no way to salvage the situation, especially since she was caught red-handed by Madame Yao. If she was just a maidservant, she believed that she would be a corpse tomorrow. Hence, she cried and told Peng Zhongfei that she was Gu Yundong's cousin. Gu Xian'er could tell that Peng Zhongfei definitely had feelings for Gu Yundong. It was because of this that she changed her mind and drugged Peng Zhongfei. She was also afraid that if that servant broke Gu Yundong's virginity, Peng Zhongfei would investigate thoroughly in anger. At that time, she would definitely be punished. Therefore, she changed her mind at the last minute and made Gu Yundong Peng Zhongfei's concubine. She would also become a thorn in Madame Yao and Concubine Xia's side. This way, she did not have to do it herself. Gu Yundong would be killed by these 2 people. Unexpectedly, she was the one who fell into the trap. Gu Xian'er hated Gu Yundong to death. If possible, she wanted to strangle her to death with her own hands. However, she did not have the time. She could not even take care of herself. How could she have the time to find trouble with Gu Yundong? Her life was more important. She even had to use Gu Yundong's name to save her life. What happened after that? Gu Yundong could not help but twitch his lips. She did not expect Gu Xian'er to be so quick-witted. However, as her protective umbrella, she felt very disgusted. Lu Wei said mysteriously, "As the saying goes, what makes you may also destroy you." Gu Xian'er did use her identity as your cousin to become a concubine, but Concubine Xia didn't know that your relationship wasn't good. She thought that the 2 of you had joined forces to enter the Peng residence to snatch her love. Therefore, Concubine Xia felt that Gu Xian'er was a huge problem. If she didn't get rid of her, Peng Zhongfei would be in the hands of the two sisters sooner or later. She would be completely thrown into the cold palace. How could she do that? Getting rid of Xian'er became the thing she needed to do the most. Not only did she want to get rid of Xian'er, but she also wanted to take the opportunity to deal with Madame Yao. Hence, Madame Yao lost her child because of Xian'er. Madame Yao hated her to death. However, Peng Zhongfei had only given her a small punishment because of Xian'er and Yundong. Madame Yao was not satisfied. She told Peng Zhongfei that the two of them were like fire and water. That day in the plum garden, Xian'er had wanted to set Yundong up with the servant who poured the urine. In the end, Yundong was fine and she climbed into young master's bed. When Peng Zhongfei heard this, he was even more convinced that Yundong had been blessed by someone to escape safely. After further investigation, Madame Yao was indeed telling the truth. Peng Zhongfei hated Xian'er to the core and handed her over to Madame Yao to deal with. He originally wanted to punish Madame Yao. He was not a fool and naturally knew that there was something wrong with Madame Yao. However, she had already aborted the child. It was fine if she said a few words, but he completely hated Madame Yao. When Lu Wei said this, he even added with a smile, "Oh right, Peng Zhongfei also asked me to pass you a message." Chapter 228. New Year's Goods. What? Cough. He said that he was quite sorry that you had encountered such a thing in his residence. Lu Wei coughed lightly and said with a smile, "Strange. Why didn't he come to tell you personally? What else could it be? He must be afraid of her. What if he was unlucky again?" Yundong sighed deeply about the Peng family. In that case, Concubine Xia has become the biggest winner. Isn't that so? Lu Wei recalled the whole story and couldn't help but tremble. These women's methods are too terrifying. Fortunately, his father was a good person and there was no such mess in the family. Otherwise, with his innocent personality, he might not live past 3 years old. Shao Qingyuan glanced at him from the corner of his eye. No one knew who he was talking to. So, one wife is enough. Lu Wei nodded in agreement. Yes, that makes sense. I won't go to brothels in the future. This awareness was quite high. Could he bear to? After knowing about the Peng family, Yundong began to focus on preparing for the new year. 23. Prepare sweet candies. 24. House cleaning day. 25. Fried tofu. 26. Stewed white meat. 27. Kill the rooster. 28. Prepare the flour. 29. Steamed buns. Although Yundong did not strictly prepare these according to the folk songs, she was indeed busy every day. In the afternoon of the 29th, she asked the eldest son of the Tong family to push the cart to the Lu family's courtyard. The villagers in the workshop were very diligent and efficient. They had already received a month's salary. 500 copper coins was not a small sum. When they saw the money, they were even more motivated. When Yundong entered the courtyard, someone immediately saw her. "Boss, why are you here? It's the holidays tomorrow, so I have to give you guys New Year's goods, so that everyone can have a good new year." Yundong smiled. Everyone was diligent, and she was happy to distribute the New Year goods. Everyone was stunned. They stopped what they were doing and looked at her in surprise. There's New Year's goods? That's right. Why is it so good? We've been paid and you're still giving out New Year goods? As he spoke, Father Tong had already pushed the cart in. Seeing that it was filled with many things, everyone present could not help but gasp. It was one thing to give out New Year goods, but why did she give out so many? Everyone became excited and couldn't help but glance at the cart. This was especially true for people from poor families. Although they received a month's salary, their families had many urgent needs. How could they have the ability to buy anything good? They wished they could come to work during the new year and show off their hard work. That way, the Gu family would recruit them again. Yundong walked to a step in the Lu family's courtyard. Unfortunately, she was still growing. Even if she stood on the step, she would only be looked at from above. She could not help but tiptoe a little. After a while, she gave up and said as if nothing had happened, "Everyone has worked hard recently. It's the new year, so it's only right to give out some rewards." Let's be happy together." Everyone immediately beamed with joy. They had just seen that there were many good things on it. They were better than what they had bought themselves. They had also heard about bosses who gave out New Year goods, but the things those people gave were not worth much. What's more, they were short-term workers. After the New Year, they would rest for a while. Yundong coughed lightly. "Next, those whose names I call, come forward and receive them one by one. I don't want to miss out on anyone." All right, someone replied. Then, as if he had thought of something, he hurriedly said, "I'll go wash my hands. I'll be back soon." Chapter 229. Come back. Seeing this, the others also looked at their sticky and black hands and quickly turned to run. Yundong was carrying the first batch of New Year goods. Before she could hand it over, everyone in front of her had already run away. Father Tong, who was standing behind her, held back his laughter. He simply lowered his head and began to organize the things on the cart, looking very busy. Yundong was speechless. She pretended that nothing had happened. Soon, the person who went out ran back and stood in front of Yundong, scratching his head and laughing. Yundong was also helpless. She held cloth in her left hand and pork in her right. Then she started to call out names. Zhuangzi, 2 caddies of pork, half a caddy of brown sugar, and half a piece of cloth. The man called Zhuangzi was so excited that his eyes turned red. He stretched out his trembling hands and took it over after a long time. The next moment, he wiped his eyes fiercely. "Boss, thank you. Thank you." His family didn't even have a new set of clothes for the new year. Now that they had cloth, he could finally make a full set for his wife and children. They could also eat meat. Yundong smiled and said deliberately, "After receiving the New Year's goods, you have to work hard. You will only rest tomorrow." Zhuangzi nodded repeatedly. "Yes, I'll definitely do my best. I'll go to work now." He carefully placed the things in a clean basket at the side and immediately went to tidy up the sugarcane in high spirits. Yundong did not stop him and continued to call the next person's name. "Su Huar. I'm here." Yundong handed the things to her. Like Zhuangzi, she immediately put them down and went to work. One by one, their names were called over. After receiving the gifts one by one, they were the same as the previous person. Soon, most of the items on the cart were distributed. Yundong looked at their satisfied and excited expressions. She smiled and left with Father Tong. There was still the Sure couple left. She carried the gifts over. Now, the Sure couple was helping her manage the orchard. Because the 30 acres of sugarcane had just been planted, there were not many things to do. The other 50 acres of land in the neighboring village had also begun to be sorted out. When spring came, they would plant fruits. The Sure couple was busy with the sugarcane fields, so they found Gaoxing's father, Zhao Zhu, to help with the fields in the neighboring village. Yundong brought an extra batch of New Year goods and asked Sure Dashan to give it to Zhao Zhu. As for Zhenggang and Zhuangzi, they were the same. The Sure family had a good New Year this year. The 3 members of the family worked for Yundong. Just the meat alone was 6 caddies. If they couldn't finish it, they would marinate it. The surrounding neighbors were envious. In the past, the Sure family was the poorest family in their area. Unexpectedly, they could not even finish eating meat. However, it was also because of this that everyone in the village knew that working in the Gu family's workshop would earn them extra things for the new year. All of them rubbed their palms together, thinking that they would definitely fight for it the next time the Gu family recruited workers. Qin Wenjing and the Lu family were also given New Year goods. After the New Year's goods were distributed, the workshop temporarily stopped work and the shop was closed. The next day was New Year's Eve. Yundong prepared everyone's red packets and even went to the county to buy firecrackers and fireworks. She was waiting for them to be lit at night. The entire village was very lively on New Year's Eve. Many people would stay up through the night for the new year. As soon as it was dark, the firecrackers in the village crackled. After this house was finished, there was the next one. There was almost no break in between. Zhang Jia of the Zheng family also brought his younger siblings out to set off firecrackers. He even greeted Yundong when he saw her. The 3 children's faces were red. In the past, their families were poor. Although they had firecrackers, they could only buy a small batch. This year, they had bought a large bunch of firecrackers. Chapter 230. Brother Shao is too pitiful. After the Zhang family finished setting off the firecrackers, they bade Gu Yundong and HR family good night and closed the door. Gu Yundong was about to set off firecrackers when she suddenly saw the quiet Shao family. Ever since they moved to the new house, Zhong, who had also returned home, Shao Qing'an was the only one left in the Shao family. She thought about how he was alone. Although he had prepared some New Year goods, they were not much. Shao Qing'an had helped her buy the firecrackers, so Gu Yundong really did not know if he had prepared them for himself. At the side, Gu Yunshu also looked at the Shao family's door. She sighed and said faintly, "Brother Shao is too pitiful." Gu Yundong's heart skipped a beat. She lowered her head and asked Gu Yunshu, "Do you dare to release these firecrackers?" Gu Yunshu clenched his fists. He had never done it, but he had seen kids crying after being injured by the firecrackers. At that time, she was quite afraid. Now, she was a little excited and had forgotten about that. But now that eldest sister asked, he remembered again. Gu Yunshu looked at his elder sister resentfully. After thinking about it, he felt that he did not have to be afraid. He was a little man and could handle dangerous matters. He took a deep breath and was about to nod when Gu Yundong said to him in a low voice, "Eldest sister doesn't dare either. Why don't you ask Brother Shao to help us light them?" Gu Yunshu held his breath and ran towards the Shao family after being pushed by Gu Yundong. The Tong family members standing behind Gu Yundong were speechless. Actually, they dared. However, they could only be invisible now. They did not dare to say or ask anything. On the other hand, the young lady, Gu Yunka, looked up as she ate peanuts. "Elder sister, Kiki will light the fire. Kiki is amazing." Gu Yundong looked at the little one beside her leg and coughed lightly. She lowered her head and said, "How about we let you set off the fireworks later? Those will fly into the sky with a swish. It's very beautiful." The little girl thought for a moment and nodded. Beautiful. She was very vain now. When she heard that she was beautiful, her eyes immediately lit up and she waited obediently. Shao Qing'an came over very quickly with a smile on his face. When he met Gu Yundong's gaze, his smile became a little strange. Gu Yundong quickly looked away and said to him, "You do this." "Okay." Shao Qing'an immediately agreed. He went forward, took the firecrackers, and tied them to a long wooden stick. After handing the head of the wooden stick to Gu Yundong, he took a matchstick and blew on it. He went forward and lit the primer before immediately retreating. The next moment, a crackling sound rang in everyone's ears. Gu Yundong handed the long wooden stick to Shao Qing'an and stood beside Gu Yunshu. The two children were jumping around, and it was unknown what they were saying. They could not be heard at all amidst the firecrackers. After a while, the firecrackers were finished. Gu Yundong then took out the fireworks. The young lady was very bold. Sure enough, she took the lighter and lit it. However, after touching it, she immediately ran back and hid in Gu Yundong's arms without looking. There was no movement for a long time. The young lady raised her head slightly and turned to look. Gu Yunshu, who was at the side, held his belly and laughed. "Ha ha 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 ha. It wasn't lit at all." In the end, it was Gu Yunshu who lit it. The little fellow was very excited. With a bang, the fireworks shot into the sky and exploded into dazzling flames. Everyone looked up with satisfied smiles on their faces. The villagers who had already closed their doors ran to the courtyard to take a look when they heard the commotion. They would get better and better in the new year. Chapter 231. Receiving red packets for the new year after the fireworks, the Gu residence was about to close, so Shao Qing'an went back. However, when he returned home, he went straight to the roof and lay on it to listen to the continuous firecrackers in the village. He turned his head slightly and looked at the Gu family. Unfortunately, the Gu family's house was built so high that he could only see the walls. Not daring to light a fire? Well, if you say you don't dare, so be it. On New Year's Eve, Shao Qing'an lay on the roof and stayed up all night. Early in the morning on the first day of New Year, Madame Yang put on new clothes for the two children and sat happily in front of the dressing table to put on makeup. Previously, Gu Yundong saw that her hands were so cold that they had frostbite, so she bought frostbite cream. Later on, she even bought face cream and lip cream to prevent her skin and lips from cracking and bleeding from the cold. Madame Yang had been using it for a while, and her face was much tenderer now. After cleaning up, the three of them left the room and ran to Gu Yundong's room to pay their New Year greetings. Gu Yundong held a red packet in his hand and gave one to each of them. After dinner, she gave each of the Tong family a red packet. Soon after, Dong Xilan brought the three children to pay a New Year visit. Gu Yundong had prepared a lot of dried fruits, pastries, and sweets. If anyone came, Gu Yundong asked made sugar water, representing the sweetness of the new year. The Gu family was very lively. Many people came one after another. Shi Dashan's family of 4, Feng Daning's family of 4, as well as the people who worked in the workshop, the villagers who built her house, and other families who had connections to all came happily. Gu Yunshu and his sister had already gone to the village chief's house to pay their New Year greetings. They were also looking for Nyodan to play with. On the other hand, Shao Qingyuan hadn't come. At noon, when everyone was almost home, he came over to eat. This was what they had agreed on at that time. He would eat breakfast at the Zheng family's house and lunch and dinner at the Gu family's house. This way, he would not be alone for the new year. Gu Yundong had also prepared a red packet for him. Unexpectedly, before he could take it out, Shao Qingyuan handed one to her. The two of them were stunned at the same time. Gu Yundong blinked and heard Shao Qingyuan say, "I thought that auntie might not remember this, so I prepared it for you. You'll have a red packet for the new year too." Madame Yang really did not remember that. She had even happily accepted one. Gu Yundong's eyes burned as she looked at the redness in her palm. This was not only the first red packet she had received in this world, but also the first she had received in her 2 lifetimes. In her previous life, when she had a phone, there were indeed people in the group who sent it, but it was everyone who fought for it. The red packet that was handed to her alone was actually so precious. Gu Yundong lowered her eyes. After a while, she looked up and smiled. "Thank you." Later on, she went back to her room and opened it. There were 10 taels of silver inside. It was actually the same as what she had prepared for him. Gu Yundong did not know how much money Shao Qingyuan had now. During the new year, she had given him his 10%. However, Shao Qingyuan had only taken out a banknote worth 100 taels of silver and returned the rest to her. He said that the money was enough for him. He would leave the rest to her as an investment. He had also bought some New Year goods during the new year. Many of the things at home had been changed. He probably did not have much money on hand now. Gu Yundong stuffed the 10 taels of silver back into the red packet. She took out a metal box from her storage and placed the red packet inside. There were a lot of things in the metal box. She had placed the deeds and household registrations inside. Chapter 232. The Qian family's granny is here on the 2nd day of the new year. Everyone started to visit their relatives. Dong Xilan brought the children to her parents' house. Gu Yundong did not have any relatives to visit, so she brought Madame Yang and the other 2 to the county school to wish Mr. Qian a happy new year. In the afternoon, they went to the Lu residence. Old Master Lu had a married eldest daughter who happened to be back, so they did not go out. On the 3rd day of the new year, Gu Yundong did not go out again. Zheng Gang brought his family over, and Zhao Zhu actually brought Goxing over to pay New Year greetings. On the 4th day of the new year, an unexpected person came to the door. This person was wearing patched clothes and holding a walking stick. Her hair indicated that she was already half 100 years old, and she was trembling as she stood at the entrance and looked around. Father Tong almost thought that she was here to beg. After asking a few more questions, he found out that this old lady was old Madame Qian from the neighboring village. She said that she was here to return the money. However, when she reached the house and saw the imposing door, she was a little afraid. Her heart was beating like a drum, so she hesitated and did not dare to knock. Father Tong did not recognize this person and quickly went to report to Gu Yundong. Gu Yundong asked her to come in first. Seeing that the old lady was very cold, She quickly moved the brazier over to let her warm up. At this moment, she also remembered who the Qian family in the neighboring village was. It was the big Qian that she had caught with when he came to her house to be a thief with Zhuangzi and Hu Liang. Back then, when she asked the four of them to hand over 5 taels of silver, Hu Liang handed it over. Zhao Zhu's family was all right, and they gritted their teeth and handed it over. Zhuangzi's family handed over a little, and the rest was paid off. Only Big Qian. At that time, 3 of the 4 people's families had arrived, but no one from his family had come. Therefore, in the end, he left after writing an IOU. There was no news after he left. Later, when Zhuangzi became familiar with her, he told her that Big Qian had gone out to look for work. He only had one grandmother. She was old and clumsy. When Big Qian was born, he fell sick. His parents brought him to the county city to see a doctor. The county city was very chaotic that year. At that time, the county magistrate was not only afraid of death, but also extremely stupid. There was a fight in the city every other day. His parents were implicated and both died. In the end, Big Qian was brought back by a fellow villager. He even recovered from his illness. Rumors spread among the villagers in an instant. They said that he was a jinx who doomed his parents and exchanged his parents' lives for his own. Big Qian had been criticized since he was young. Even though his grandmother did not believe those words and was good to him, he still developed an inferiority complex and a sensitive and malicious personality. He didn't have any friends when he was young and was often beaten up until he was covered in injuries. Later on, he slowly grew up and knew how to fight back, but he couldn't beat most of them. Hu Liang could be considered his first friend. Not only did he help him when he was beaten up, but he also brought him along. After following him, Big Qian knew that what Hu Liang did was not the right path. But what did it matter? They were friends and should help each other. Besides, these people scolded him and hit him first. They only stole a little and didn't hurt them. Look, after he followed Hu Liang, these people were scared to death when they saw him. Grandma Qian was furious because of this. But what could she do? She was old and could not control it. It was not until a few months ago when Grandma Qian fainted from anger and the doctor said that she could not be agitated anymore that Big Qian came back to his senses. He only had one family member. They had relied on each other since he was young. How could he bear to let anything happen to her? Therefore, Big Qian went to Hu Liang and said that he did not plan to fool around in the future and would farm obediently. Of course, Hu Liang was unwilling. Even Zhuangzi and Goxing could not understand at that time. They scolded him for being ungrateful and worse than a beast. However, Big Qian had already made up his mind. He had no choice. In the end, Hu Liang asked him to do one last job. At that time, they had gone to steal Gu Yundong's money, but they failed. Chapter 233. Return the money. Not only did he fail, but he also had to pay 5 taels of silver. How could the Qian family have it? Actually, the old lady of the Qian family had also heard that something had happened to her grandson and rushed to Yongfu village. However, she walked slowly and met Big Qian halfway. The next day, he went out to look for work and never came back. Gu Yundong had never thought of urging them to repay their debts. Although she had an IOU on hand, she did not write down the repayment date at that time. After knowing that Big Qian only had Grandma Qian at home, she would not go. Unexpectedly, Grandma Qian came to visit during the new year. The room was warm. Grandma Qian felt that her hands were not as cold as before, so she slowly took out a cloth bag. The cloth bag was spread out in her hand. She opened it layer by layer, slowly revealing the silver inside. Trembling, she placed the silver pieces on the table one by one and counted them as she did so. When she was done, she looked at Gu Yundong. "Miss, this is the 5 taels of silver that we owe you. I've brought it all over." Gu Yundong was speechless for a long time. Grandma Qian lowered her head and said in a low voice, "Big Qian is a good child. He just took a wrong turn in a moment of folly and won't do it again. He didn't want to default on this money. That day, he ran out to find work and only came back this morning. As soon as he arrived home, he said that he had earned the money he owed you. Now that he's tired and sleeping at home, I brought it over for you. Miss, I'm sorry. Please forgive him and don't blame him, okay? Gu Yundong met her slightly turbid eyes and felt a lump in her throat. After a while, she said in a slightly hoarse voice, "Yes, I'll forgive him if he can change his ways." The wrinkles on Grandma Qian's face loosened, and she smiled until her eyes narrowed. All right, they'll go back now." After saying that, she took her walking stick and was about to leave. She did not even ask for the IOU. Gu Yundong quickly helped her sit down. "Granny Qian, there's no hurry to leave. It's the new year. How can you not even drink a glass of water when you come to my house? Come, this is sugar water. Try it. It's sweet." "Miss, Besides, Big Qian even gave me an IOU back then. I don't even know where I put it. I have to find it and return it to you, lest I can't explain it in the future, right?" When Grandma Qian heard this, she remembered that there was such a thing. This time, it was not easy for her to leave. Gu Yundong placed the walking stick aside and stuffed a warm cup into her hand. She subconsciously picked it up and took a sip. She was stunned. It was really sweet. It was different from the brown sugar she drank when she was young. Other than sweetness, there was no other taste. Gu Yundong brought her soft pastries again, but the old man refused to eat them. At this moment, Gu Yunshu and Gu Yunka returned. She waved and asked them to coax Grandma Qian to eat. She turned around and returned to her room, quickly finding the IOU. She looked at the note in her hand and sighed slightly. She had to accept the 5 taels of silver. Since the guy had done it, he had to pay the price. If she saw that the other party was pitiful and let him go easily, then how could she manage the workshop and shop? When the other party did something wrong later, he would cry in front of her and complain. Then her workshop would at most be at this size. However, she could not watch Grandma Qian go back just like that. Grandma Qian was a good person. She had never thought of giving this old woman a hard time. Moreover, to be able to earn 5 taels of silver in such a short period of time, Big Qian was clearly not too stupid. Chapter 234. Unexpected person. When Gu Yundong came out again, she had something in her hand. Grandma Qian, who was in the central room, was indeed coaxed by the 2 children to eat something. The smile on her face became brighter. "Grandma Qian, this is the IOU. Take it back and let Big Qian burn it in the stove. Then, the debt between us will be written off." Grandma Qian took the note and opened the cloth bag. She carefully placed the note inside and covered it before putting it back into her arms. Then I'll leave now. She felt a little embarrassed after eating such good pastries. She quickly grabbed her walking stick and was about to leave. Gu Yundong smiled. "There's no hurry. There's still something here for you to bring back." "Huh? Why are you giving something to me?" When she narrowed her eyes and saw the cloth and meat in her hand, she widened her eyes in shock. This is for me? Why are you giving it to me?" "It's not just for you. Zhuangzi and Gaoxing's families also have it. They've also returned the money." She didn't mention the New Year goods that these 2 families were given for working for her. Did Grandma Qian think that the Gu family was kind enough to offer meat and cloth as a reward for returning the money? She was a little confused now, but the Shi family and the Zhao family had them. She thought that everyone had agreed. Gu Yundong saw that her hand was trembling slightly, so she called Tong Shuitao over and handed her the things. "Send Granny Qian back." "All right." Tong Shuitao took the things and helped Grandma Qian away. Gu Yundong did not turn around to get busy until they had completely walked out of the door. What she did not know was that not long after they left the door, Tong Shuitao squatted down and carried Grandma Qian away. The Qian family's matters were settled. After the 4th day of the new year, the workshop started work again on the 5th day of the new year. The villagers were very excited. They even went to the Lu family's courtyard early in the morning and started to clean up. Gu Yundong also gave everyone a red packet for opening the business. It was not much. 10 copper coins per person was just a token to get good luck. The shop in the county city was also open. Zhuangzi had an especially comfortable new year. How should he put it? He ate well and had work to do. Most importantly, the relatives who used to look down on his family now had a hint of flattery in their words. Zhuangzi was very impatient with these people. In the past, he had never visited his relatives during the new year. When something happened to his family, he had never seen these people reach out. They only made sarcastic remarks. In the past few years, the Sure couple would take Xian'er for a walk. After all, the two children were already grown. If they want to get married in the future, their reputation would be very important. This year, Zhuangzi had followed them for 3 days just to show off. There were actually people who wanted to arrange a marriage for Zhuangzi, but Zhuangzi rejected them expressionlessly. He even went to see Big Qian and Goshing. When he found out that Big Qian had returned the money and the Gu family had even sent something over, he patted his shoulder and sighed. Work hard in the future and take care of your grandmother. If there's a chance in the future, it'll help you ask if you can work for the Gu family. It's really good to work for the Gu family. It's easy to talk about marriage in the future if you have money. Zhuangzi now held Gu Yundong in high esteem. He felt that if Gu Yundong could use him, she would definitely be able to use Big Qian in the future. Although she was a little cruel at times, as long as he listened, he would be able to get candy. Big Qian was still a little uncomfortable, but when he thought of Tong Shui Tao and those things that his grandmother had brought back that day, the discomfort he felt towards the Gu family was almost gone. Goshing was now working for his father, helping him tidy up the orchard. This guy was also very obedient. The 4 thieves had all turned over a new leaf. Other than Hu Liang, who had broken his legs and was still lying in bed. Even his parents had begun to despise him. Gu Yundong's workshop and shop were on the right track. There was no problem for the time being, but an unexpected person came to Yongfu village that day. Chapter 235. Aunt Ku is here when they saw another carriage drive into the village and ask for the Gu family's address. The villagers of Yongfu village were already numb. In any case, almost all the carriages entering the village were looking for the Gu family. However, the children in the village still skipped behind the carriage to join in the fun. The carriage stopped at the entrance of the Gu residence. A woman in plain clothes got out of the carriage. After the person handed the money to the coachman, the carriage turned around and left. The people behind the carriage suddenly realized that the carriage was rented. The woman stood at the Gu family's entrance and looked up at the imposing green brick tiled house in front of her. She laughed and said in a low voice, "I knew that girl was capable. It's only been a while, but she actually has the money to build such a big house." Madame Cui did not know her. Seeing that she was standing at the door and did not enter, she could not help but take a step forward. "May I ask who you are looking for? Gu Yundong's house is here, right?" The woman retracted her gaze and asked with a smile. Madame Cui nodded. "Yes, this is the Gu family. May I ask who you are?" "I'm—" The woman was about to answer when the sound of a carriage rolling suddenly came from behind. A child shouted, "Gu Yunshu, you're back. Your relative is here." In the carriage, Gu Yunshu scratched his head. "Relative?" He opened the curtain of the carriage and looked outside. Coincidentally, the woman turned around and their eyes met. The woman smiled. Yes, the skinny and weak little fellow finally had some flesh on his face. He looked decent in his student uniform and was somewhat useful to Gu Yundong. Gu Yunshu's eyes lit up and he hurriedly wanted to jump down from the carriage. Father Tong was so frightened that he quickly hugged him and let him land steadily. The next moment, Gu Yunshu rushed towards the woman. "Aunt Ku, why are you here? When did you come? Have you eaten? Why don't you come in?" Aunt Ka hugged him and squatted down to pinch his little face. "I just came over. Did you come back from school? If I had known earlier, I would have let the carriage walk slower. Who knows, we might have bumped into each other on the way. I've been riding the carriage all day. I'm very tired. In order to reach your village before dark, the coachman worked so hard that my old bones almost scattered. I only ate 2 little buns on the way. I specially came to your house on an empty stomach and let your sister cook braised pork for me. Io, you're getting more and more beautiful. You look really energetic in these clothes. Have you been in school for a few days? How's the teacher of the school? Did any of your classmates bully you? How many friends have you made? Is the school very far away? Your elder sister is really too much. Why didn't she find a closer place for you? Look at the cold weather. You have to rush to school in the morning. You'll fall sick from the cold. Gu Yunshu chuckled. He knew that Aunt Ku looked serious, but she could ramble on for 2 hours without stopping in front of him and his sister. But even so, Gu Yunshu was very happy and did not find her annoying at all. It's only been a month. Aunt, let's go in first. It's cold at the door. They'll bring you to see our house. My house is very beautiful. Come. He pulled Aunt Ku inside. Eldest sister, mother, Kiki. Aunt Ku is here. Gu Yundong was in the backyard with Madame Yang and Gu Yunke. She did not know what had happened in front. Now that Gu Yunshu was shouting at the top of his lungs, she could vaguely hear him. She was stunned and quickly ran out. Aunt Ku? It's really you. Why are you here? Chapter 236. Serious business. Aunt Ku no longer had that kind expression when facing Gu Yundong. She snorted softly. Why? Can't I come? Of course you can come. The two little ones were talking about you 2 days ago. Gu Yundong quickly invited her to sit in the central room. Gu Yunshu had already rushed over to pour some sugar water. Aunt Ku took a sip and nodded. Looks like your business is doing well. Gu Yundong had sent her and Yezong New Year's goods before the new year. She had asked Zhang Gang's family's bodyguard agency to deliver them. Among them was white sugar. She had also written a letter, but she had roughly mentioned her business without writing in detail. It's not bad. Aunt Ku nodded at her. You're pretending to be humble again. Then she looked at Gu Yunke. The young lady had not seen her for months. Although she knew Aunt Ku, she was still young and her mind was a little blurry. At this moment, she was standing behind her and looking at her curiously. Aunt K's heart melted from her big, watery eyes. She hurriedly waved her hand. Kiki doesn't remember Aunt Ku? In the past, when you were at my house, you insisted on sleeping with me. Aunt Ku even told you many stories. Have you forgotten? Yes. Was it the big tabby cat story? Oh, so you still remember. Aunt Ku was even happier. Do you still want to hear it? This time I'll tell you about the big yellow dog. The little girl nodded. Seeing her brothers and sisters looking at her with smiles, she immediately threw herself into Aunt K's arms. Aunt Ku had endless things to say to the two children. After speaking to Gu Yundong briefly, she ignored her. It was Gu Yunshu who whispered to her, eldest sister. Aunt Ku said that she only ate 2 small buns today and wants to eat your braised pork. All right, eldest sister will cook it. Gu Yundong laughed. She instructed Gu Yunshu to chat with her, but he must not tire Aunt Ku out. She turned her head and instructed Madame Zhong to clean up the guest room. Then she went into the kitchen. She had not cooked in a long time, so she could show off her skills. Aunt Ku was tired after all. She went to the guest room to sleep for almost an hour. When she woke up, she could have dinner. However, when she saw the unfamiliar man sitting in the Gu family's restaurant, she could not help but raise her eyebrows. As Aunt Ku, who had grown up with her childhood sweetheart and had a good relationship with him, she knew what Shao Qingyuan's gaze meant. No matter how obscure it was, she could clearly see the gaze that would drift to Gu Yundong from time to time. Moreover, this man was very aggressive. One look and one could tell that he was the kind of person who would not give up until he achieved his goal. Furthermore, he listened to Gu Yundong's every word and entered the kitchen whenever he was told to. Gu Yundong was used to his dog-like temper and would not fancy other men. Sooner or later, she would fall into his hands. Aunt Ku sighed inwardly. She had wanted to matchmake her silly nephew Yezong and Gu Yundong, but now it seemed that she should forget it. She would just focus on watching the show. Shao Qingyuan was a man of few words. He knew Aunt Ku and knew that she had helped the Gu family a lot. Hence, his attitude was friendly. He greeted her first and quietly became a listener. He ate braised pork. Seeing that his movements were not slow, even if Aunt Ku wanted to chat with the two children, she forcefully endured it and became a refined noblewoman who did not speak during meals. Let's eat first. However, after eating, it was more important to talk about serious matters first. Chapter 237. Does Big Sister not want me anymore? Aunt Ku wiped her mouth and went straight to the point. I came this time mainly because there's news from Dr. Song. Gu Yundong was shocked. Joy flashed across her face and she almost stood up in excitement. Really? Where is he? In Qing'an Prefecture. Qing'an Prefecture? Yundong was stunned. Wasn't that Aunt Ku, physician he from Huimin Medical Center told me. He still remembers your mother's condition. Physician Song went back to Xian'er Prefecture, but he only stayed for an hour to get some herbs before leaving. He said that he was going to Qing'an Prefecture. There's an important patient waiting for him there. Yundong clenched her fists tightly and trembled slightly. She looked at Madame Yang, who was still confused, and the hope in her heart grew. I received the news yesterday and came over early this morning. Dr. Song should have left yesterday. He probably has to stay in Qing'an Prefecture for a period of time. At the very least, he has to treat that important patient. What do you think now? Yundong slowly exhaled and held Madame Yang's hand with her fingers. The latter smiled and put her other hand on it. Yundong's voice was slow and firm. I'm going to Qing'an Prefecture, of course. Aunt Ku smiled and said, I think so too. All right. Doctor, he said that he doesn't know the address of Dr. Song's patient. If you go to Qing'an Prefecture, you can go to Huimin Medical Center there. You should be able to find out Dr. Song's whereabouts. Yundong nodded. Okay. You previously said that your father agreed to meet you in Qing'an Prefecture. Since you're going over this time, are you going to ask about him? Yes. Yundong said. Actually, I was thinking of going to Qing'an Prefecture after the Lantern Festival. I didn't expect you to send Dr. Song's message. Then I might as well set off early. There's no problem. Now that she had money, the workshop was stable, and she had a shop, there were servants at home who could take care of Madame Yang and the two children. Therefore, the matter of finding her father became urgent. After the Lantern Festival, she planned to make a trip to Qing'an Prefecture alone. But since Dr. Song was there, she had to bring Madame Yang along. Yunshu listened from the side and quickly understood. He immediately jumped up and asked, Eldest sister, can mother's illness be cured and father be found? Yunka jumped as well. That's great. That's great. When Madame Yang heard the word father, she suddenly looked up, and her eyes lit up. Although Yundong also hoped that everything would go her way, she still had to tell the truth. I'm not sure yet. Of course, it's best if we can cure mother and find father, but nothing is absolute. I'm not sure yet. Yunshu was a little disappointed, but he quickly pulled himself together. But there's still hope, right? That's right. Shao Qing'an, who had been silent all this while, suddenly said, When do you plan to set off? There's no time to lose. Tomorrow it is. This time even Aunt Ku was surprised. So fast. Yes, he'll make some arrangements in the morning and leave in the afternoon. The atmosphere in the central room suddenly became tense. Even Yunka seemed to realize something. She quietly pulled Yundong's hand and asked softly, Eldest sister, are you leaving? Where are you going? What about me? Yundong carried her over. Eldest sister will be away for a while. Kiki, can you wait for eldest sister at home? The little girl burst into tears and hugged her neck tightly. Big sister, don't you want me anymore? Chapter 238. Explanation. Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry. She simply carried her out. As they walked, she coaxed her softly. How can eldest sister not want Kiki? Eldest sister is bringing mother to the doctor. Kiki also knows that mother is sick, right? The little girl buried her head in her arms, but she still nodded gently. That doctor is very far away now. Your eldest sister has to bring mother over quickly. This way, she can bring mother back as soon as possible. At that time, Kiki will be able to see eldest sister and mother again. At that time, will mother recover from her illness? It's possible. That doctor is very powerful. If eldest sister finds him, mother's illness will be cured. The little girl still hugged her neck tightly, and her sobbing gradually became softer. After a long time, she said softly and firmly, Then eldest sister go. He'll be good. He'll wait at home. Independent Illinois also take care of older brother and not make him cry. Yes, Kiki is the best. The little girl lowered her head shyly and muttered softly, I cried just now. It wasn't very good. Yundong burst out laughing. She looked down at Gu Yunshu, who had been following behind her silently. If eldest sister leaves, you will be the biggest man in our family. You have to take good care of your sister and study well. If you have anything you don't understand, ask the teacher. If you feel uncomfortable, tell Aunt Ku in time. Don't take off your clothes when you're hot. You'll catch a cold. Understand? That's right. Gu Yundong had already thought it through. While she was away, she would ask Aunt Ku to help take care of Gu Yunka, who was staying at home. She thought that Aunt Ku must have had the intention to do that since she delivered the message personally at this time. Yes. The little guy hung his head low and was also in a low mood. Eldest sister was leaving, their mother was leaving, and their father was not around. Gu Yunshu felt that his mission was very important. Seeing that the two children were unhappy, Gu Yundong could not help but secretly sigh. After all, they had been together for a few months and had never been separated. This parting was also sudden, so it was normal for her to find it difficult to accept it. Gu Yundong coaxed the two children as she explained in detail what they should do after she left. Afraid that they wouldn't remember, she simply wrote it down. Anyway, Yunshu knew how to read. In addition, there were many people at home. The two children would not be short of food and clothes. The conditions in the old Gu family were much more difficult than now. Gu Yundong only came out after sending the two of them back to their rooms. She went to the guest room to look for Aunt Ku. Before she could speak, the latter said, "Don't worry. They'll stay at your house while you're gone. I have no problem taking care of the two children. Besides, I didn't expect you to have servants at your house. They can help." Gu Yundong trusted Aunt Ku. She took out a banknote. Aunt Ku frowned. "Why? Is this considered my salary? Do you want to be my boss?" She sounded very unhappy. Gu Yundong shook her head. "Of course not. This is the cost of food. You have to eat and wear, right? Keep the rest on you for emergencies. I don't know when he'll be back. When the weather warms up later, you still have to buy cloth to make clothes for Yunshu and the rest." Aunt Ku accepted it in satisfaction when she heard her tone. Gu Yundong came out after exchanging a few words with her. She still had some things to tell the Tong family. However, not long after she walked out of the guest room, she saw a figure standing in the courtyard. Shao Qingyuan's expression flickered under the night sky, looking a little cold. Chapter 239. I'll only be relaxed with you around seeing her. Shao Qingyuan straightened his body slightly and walked towards her. After standing still, he said, "I'll go with you." Gu Yundong shook her head. "No. If you encounter any danger on the way with nobody except Auntie, I can help." Gu Yundong smiled. "I brought my mother, brother, and sister here safely even when I was escaping from the wilderness. Now, my mother is the only one I'm taking. There's no problem." Shao Qingyuan frowned, but he didn't say anything. Gu Yundong sighed. "If you leave, what will happen to the family? What about the workshop? What about the shop? Aunt Ku is not from the village after all. She is not familiar with many things. The Tong family are servants. Although the people in the village don't say anything, there are many people who don't take them seriously. Mr. Qian lives in the county city. If anything happens, he won't be able to rush over in time. As long as you're here, I won't have anything to worry about. As long as you're here, I won't have anything to worry about." Shao Qingyuan's breathing suddenly stopped, and his heart raced. He lowered his eyes slightly and smiled bitterly. This person was always capable. He had already made up his mind to follow her no matter what she said, but he was convinced with just one sentence. He really wanted to seal her mouth. Okay. In the end, he agreed. "I'll take care of your family and protect your siblings." "Thank you." Gu Yundong was telling the truth. With Shao Qingyuan's personality, identity, and ability, she was most assured to leave the family matters to him. Without Shao Qingyuan, she was not sure if she could go away so firmly. It was also at this moment that she realized that she seemed to have placed too much importance on him. Gu Yundong could not help but rub the space between her eyebrows. She thought that she had to sort out some feelings and think them through. She took out a lot of banknotes for Shao Qingyuan. "You have to accept this money this time. The orchard will require a lot of money to buy seedlings. Also, you have to come to the workshop to distribute the wages. After the Lantern Festival, you have to find Uncle Feng to build your own workshop. I've already drawn the specific blueprints. They'll give them to you later. You and Uncle Feng can discuss it. Gu Yundong looked up. In short, you're in charge of everything here. Okay. As they were leaving tomorrow, Gu Yundong spoke a lot. After Shao Qingyuan finished giving instructions, she went to the village chief Chen Liang's house and said that she would be away for a while. After that, she returned to pack her luggage. Actually, there wasn't much. There were only some clothes and shoes in her bag. The rest were all in her spatial storage. After going through everything, she returned to her room to sleep. The next morning, she got up early again and went to the kitchen to make a lot of good food. Then, she took some and put them into her spatial storage without anyone knowing. Her spatial storage could preserve freshness so she could eat warm food on the way. She was not in a hurry to leave. After the two children got up and bade them farewell, she brought Madame Yang into the carriage under their reluctant gazes. Madame Yang didn't know what to do at first. It was only after Aunt Ku patiently explained it to her last night that she vaguely understood half of it. Tong Shuitao had wanted to follow them to take care of their clothes, food, accommodation, and transportation, but she was rejected by Gu Yundong. She would definitely have to use the spatial storage a lot along the way. Forget it. Besides, she and Madame Yang were already missing from the team who processed white sugar. Every worker counted. When Gu Yundong drove the carriage to the county city, the city gate had just opened. Chapter 240. Departure to Qing'an Prefecture. Gu Yundong had to go to Qin Wenzheng School. Qin Wenzheng also knew a little about her family, but he really did not know that Madame Yang's illness needed to be treated by Dr. Song. He knew Dr. Song. He had even met him back then and said a few words. That person was really capable. However, back then, the late emperor was muddle-headed. Physician Song was clearly skilled in medicine, but he was framed. If not for the fact that he had once saved the late Empress Dowager's life and the Empress Dowager begged for mercy, Imperial Physician Song might not even be able to keep his life. Unfortunately, ever since Imperial Physician Song left the capital, Qin Wenzheng did not know where he went. He heard that the emperor wanted to hire him back to the Imperial Hospital. So he was in Qing'an Prefecture? Qin Wenzheng asked Gu Yundong to wait while he went to the study to write a letter. If you see Dr. Song, please help me pass this letter to him. Yunshu, don't worry and leave everything to me. He'll also watch over your family. Okay. Gu Yundong received the letter and went to the Lu residence. She had met Old Master Lu a few times. Old Master Lu had imparted some business experience to her. Gu Yundong was quite grateful to him. This time, she came over to bid farewell to Lu Wei so that he wouldn't complain later that she didn't treat him as a friend. At the same time, if Old Master Lu had any experience, he could give Shao Qingyuan some pointers. Gu Yundong finally went to Gus. Zhuangzi was very happy to see her. He did not expect her to bring him such shocking news. When he heard that he should look for Shao Qingyuan if he had any problems in the future, he felt terrible. In the future, he would settle his own matters and try not to trouble others. After a whole circle, she had said everything she needed to say. Shao Qingyuan, Aunt Ku, Teacher Qin, and Old Master Lu were all reliable. She had nothing to worry about. Gu Yundong took a deep breath. After getting into the carriage, she went straight to the city gate. However, this time they did not go home after leaving the city gate. Instead, they went straight to Qing'an Prefecture. Madame Yang opened the curtains and saw an unfamiliar scene flying in front of her. She felt a little flustered. She quickly lifted the curtain and saw Gu Yundong driving the carriage. She immediately calmed down. Gu Yundong heard the commotion behind her and could not help but turn around. "What's wrong, mother?" Madame Yang shook her head slightly. "Nothing. They'll sit down immediately." Gu Yundong smiled. "There's something to eat in the cabinet beside the carriage. If mother wants to eat it, you can take it yourself." Oh, okay." Madame Yang nodded repeatedly and carefully opened the cabinet beside her. There was sugar, preserved fruit, oranges, pastries, and a container with water in it. Madame Yang looked around and finally took a sip of water. She felt a little better and sat down obediently. She didn't know how long she had maintained this posture. After enduring it for a while, she finally couldn't help but ask, "Dong Dong, where are we going?" "Mother, do you still remember where Father has repeatedly instructed us to meet?" Madame Yang knew this answer and said almost without thinking, "Qing'an Prefecture." "Yes, let's go to Qing'an Prefecture." The carriage drove very quickly. She did not stop at noon and only took out warm pancakes and buns from her space and handed them to Madame Yang. She had bought them in the county previously. There were 2 large bags. After Madame Yang finished eating, Yundong casually took a few bites. When the sky was about to turn dark, they finally arrived at their first stop. Chapter 241. Seeing Yundong's foolish smile, this was a small town with a small population. There were only 2 or 3 good inns in the town. Yundong chose a rather lively inn and she only booked an upper room. When she was out, she naturally had to stay with Madame Yang. The day before, she slept late and woke up early. After dinner, she fell asleep as soon as she touched the pillow. On the other hand, Madame Yang was a little unaccustomed with her eyes open. Ashu and Kiki weren't around, but Dong Dong was. It was fine. Madame Yang turned sideways. She did not move, afraid that she would disturb Yundong's rest. She just looked at her gently. Seeing that Yundong had kicked the blanket away, she hurriedly covered her again nervously. Yundong was a light sleeper when she was outside. She suddenly opened her eyes. Madame Yang immediately became helpless. "Did I wake you up? I just wanted to cover you with a blanket. You'll catch a cold." Yundong's expression immediately softened. She looked at the blanket on her body and said in a low voice, "It's okay. Go to sleep." "Okay." This time, Madame Yang obediently closed her eyes and tried her best to fall asleep. Yundong could not help but smile. She felt warm all over. Although her mother was innocent, she loved the children very much. She really hoped that they could successfully find Dr. Song this time and get him to treat her mother's illness. Her journey had been quite smooth. She hoped that this smoothness would continue. Yundong closed her eyes and fell asleep quietly. The next morning, the 2 of them got up early and set off again. It was a long journey from Yongfu village to Qing'an Prefecture, and it was impossible for the horse to speed up every day. Even if they could take it, the horse could not. When she left home, the 2 little guys reminded her repeatedly to take good care of Wind Chaser. Therefore, Yundong would be slow for a day if she rushed for 2 days. Dr. Song had only set off 2 days earlier than her. Qin Wenjing said that he was already old, so he definitely couldn't ride the carriage too quickly. Otherwise, he would fall sick. She should be able to make it. After 5 to 6 days, they were almost halfway through the journey. They would not always coincidentally encounter a town or county city and be able to stay in an inn. Sometimes, when it was dark and they happened to arrive at a village, they would stay here for the night. Just like this village called Fugueo Village. It was quite fitting to call it a rich village. This village was much better than Yongfu Village. After all, the village was close to the official road and there were many guests coming and going. There were even people selling snacks at the entrance of the village. Therefore, when Yundong's carriage drove into the village, the adults who passed by only looked at it in surprise. Only a few children followed behind happily, as if they were joining in the fun. Yundong went to look for the village chief directly. Hence, this Fugue village was not called for nothing. It was obvious that the village chief was much smarter than Chen Liang. He mentioned a bunch of benefits of the village so that he could raise the accommodation fee. Yundong lived in the village chief's house. It was also a green brick house with many rooms. It was not a problem to vacate one of the rooms for Yundong and her mother. They even included breakfast and dinner. The price was also within her acceptable range. Yundong nodded and planned to go out to pull the carriage to the backyard. Beside the carriage stood a group of children. When they saw her come out, they ran away with a smile. Only one person was still standing there. That person was not a child. He was tall and big. He tilted his head slightly and smiled foolishly at Yundong. However, when Yundong saw the person's face clearly, her pupils constricted and she was stunned on the spot. Chapter 242. Unexpectedly, an old friend, the village chief, also saw that person when he came out. He frowned slightly, but he still said to him patiently, "It's already so late. Hurry up and go home. Don't stay outside." That person chuckled, turned around, and ran. Yundong came back to her senses and asked, "Who was that?" "Oh, him. He came to our village a few months ago." The village chief didn't mind saying this. "I think he escaped from Yongning Prefecture in the past." It's said that when he arrived at Qing'an Prefecture, he encountered chaos. His parents, wife, and daughter were gone. He was injured himself and he became unclear. In the beginning, he was awake for most of the day, but now... As the village chief spoke, he shook his head. For now, it's already good enough if he's awake for 1 day in 2 days. When he first came, he even saw a doctor. The doctor said that he could be cured. "There's a widow in our village. Seeing that he's penniless and sick, she married him and lived with him." The corners of Yundong's mouth twitched. Why? Could they become husband and wife just because she sympathized him? Only a fool would believe that. The widow probably saw that he was good-looking, right? This was just a cover. "If I may ask, how old is the widow?" The village chief coughed lightly and looked a little strange. "About 10 years older than him. Widow son's family background is not bad. Her husband has been dead for many years. It's fine to marry again. If this person's illness can be cured, it will be a happy thing." The village chief shook his head. "Unfortunately, his condition is getting worse. Widow son is also impatient with him now. Look at the clothes he's wearing." Sigh. Yundong realized that the village chief was very nosy and open-minded. She knew that many villages did not allow widows to remarry, such as the old Gu family. Did that man say his wife and daughter were dead? The village chief nodded. Yes, he said it when he was sober. He was quite sad. "You seem to be very curious about his affairs. Why? Do you know him?" Yundong shook her head decisively. No. The village chief had already led them to the backyard. He instructed his wife, Madame Zhong, who was tidying up the guest room, "Take care of Miss Gu and Madame Gu." Madame Zhong agreed and asked Yundong with a smile, "Where are you going and what are you going to do?" Yundong answered casually, but she looked a little dazed. She did not expect to meet Ming here. He had become a fool. Although her mother was also ignorant, her mother only did not understand and think about some profound things. As long as others explained it to her in a simple manner, she would be obedient and do it. However, the Ming just now had a silly smile on his face. He was like a person who could not take care of himself. There was also the matter of his parents, wife, and daughter dying. She did not expect that the last time she met her aunt would be that time outside Qing'an Prefecture City. Yundong did not feel guilty at all. Those who wanted to harm others would always be harmed. If it had been her eldest aunt's family back then, she would definitely have taken them away and protected them. "Miss Gu, rest for a while. I'll call you again after dinner." Madame Zhang's voice pulled her back to her senses. Yundong put Ming's matter to the back of her mind and smiled at Madame Zhang. "All right, thank you, Aunt." Madame Zhang shook her head and left the guest room. However, as soon as she left the house, she immediately ran to her room to look for her man in a hurry, looking mysterious. Chapter 243. Gossip couple. The village chief was happily eating peanuts with the money Yundong had given him. When he saw his wife enter, he only raised his eyes slightly. "Have you tidied it up over there?" All right. Madame Zhang waved her hand and sat on the brick bed. She reached out and snatched the money from his hand before putting it away. The village chief wanted to say something, but he immediately stopped when she glared at him. Madame Zhang, on the other hand, was in high spirits. She leaned close to his ear and whispered, "Do you know what I found?" "What? Wasn't that Miss Gu the one who kept talking to us just now?" Her mother had been standing at the side and didn't speak. "At first, I thought she was a mute, but I didn't expect." She pointed at her head. "There seems to be a problem here." The village chief sat up straighter in surprise. "Really?" However, he shook his head slightly. "It doesn't look like it. She's dressed neatly and cleanly. When she doesn't speak, she's like a quiet noblewoman. She's not at all the same as that half-wit who just came to our village. Madame Zhong pinched him. Do you still think that she's quite good-looking? You were looking so carefully. The village chief hurriedly shook his head. I didn't. As he spoke, he touched his chin. I was wondering why that little girl kept asking me about Fu Ming. It turns out that her mother is also sick. Madame Zhong also ate a peanut. But it doesn't look as serious as Fu Ming's. I heard her speak like a child. She's quite obedient. When she asked you, her tone was gentle. If you don't pay attention to her expression, she's really like a noblewoman. She dresses well too. Look, you said that too. Then why did you pinch me just now and blame me for looking at her? Madame Zhong glared at him fiercely. I can look, but you can't. She's a woman. As a man, you're a lecher if you look at her. The village chief said weakly. She's staying at our house. What if I don't see her clearly and mistake her for someone else? Yundong stood under the window outside and was speechless for a long time. She really did not mean to eavesdrop. She just wanted to come over and ask if Madame Zhong had hot water. She did not expect to hear the two of them talking about her name as soon as she walked over. After all, she was afraid of encountering a shady shop when she was outside, so she listened more. Unexpectedly, this couple was indeed a match made in heaven. They were both so gossipy. Since they did not have any ill intentions, Yundong did not say anything. She only stepped forward slightly and called aunt when she was far away. Other than the gossip factor that had been burning, Madame Zhong was not bad in other aspects. She would ask Yundong and her mother about their tastes and if they were used to the temperature here and if they needed more blankets. However, she would ask Yundong some personal questions from time to time. If she could answer, she would. If she could not, Yundong would smile. This made Madame Zhong even more itchy. Yundong was also speechless. Fortunately, they were only staying for a day. After dinner, she and Madame Yang went to rest. The next morning, Yundong prepared to set off. She led the carriage out and helped Madame Yang in. Unexpectedly, just as she was about to leave, Madame Zhong suddenly called out to her, Girl, I've packed some pickled radishes for you. Don't you like them? Take them and eat slowly on the way. Madame Zhong marinated the radish herself. Her family did not like it, but Yundong liked it very much. Madame Zhong was overjoyed. Yundong quickly went back and saw Madame Zhong walking over with a small jar. She quickly took it. Unexpectedly, Madame Yang's scream suddenly came from the carriage outside. Ah! Chapter 244. Your Uncle Yundong's heart skipped a beat. She retracted her hand and ran out, lifting the curtain of the car. Madame Yang was huddled in the corner of the carriage, looking at a sloppy man squatting opposite her in horror. The man's back was facing the door. Yundong did not even look at him and pulled him down. With a thud, the man fell to the ground with a heavy thud. Yundong ignored him and hurriedly got into the carriage. She hugged Madame Yang and patted her back. It's all right, mother. It's all right. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Madame Yang took 2 deep breaths and quickly calmed down. I'm fine, Dong Dong. I'm fine. I'm not worried. Only then did Yundong let go. Seeing that she had a gentle smile on her face, her hair was not messy, and her clothes were neat, Yundong felt slightly relieved. She had just turned around and entered the door. Madame Yang must have just been shocked by the sudden appearance of the man and was not injured. Only then did Yundong jump out of the carriage. At this moment, the village chief and Madame Zhong had also come out. They immediately saw Fu Ming, who was lying on the ground clutching his leg and moaning. Yundong also saw the person clearly and was immediately shocked and furious. She turned around and saw a wooden stick in the corner. She picked it up and was about to hit him. The village chief quickly stopped her. Girl, calm down. This is a fool. His mind isn't clear. He probably went up curiously when he saw the carriage. We can't hurt anyone. Madame Zhong put down the small jar. When she saw Madame Yang get out of the carriage, she quickly brought her behind Yundong and said, That's right. That's right. Don't be rash. Look, your mother is frightened. You can't hit someone in front of her. Yundong snorted. She even dared to kill someone in front of Madame Yang when she was escaping. Why would she be afraid of hitting Fu Ming, who had a grudge against her? The villagers who heard the commotion next door also came out. Someone went forward to help Fu Ming up and even reprimanded him. "What are you doing here so early in the morning? Why did you run into someone's carriage for no reason? There's nothing to eat in the carriage." However, Fu Ming did not seem to hear the person's words. He had fallen on his leg just now, so the pain was not as intense now. He could finally speak. However, he ignored everyone and said pitifully with a bitter expression, "Yundong, Yundong, I've finally met you. You don't know how hard my life has been. Your aunt and cousin are gone. They're gone. I didn't expect to see you here. Take me away." Everyone was stunned. "Idiot! Are you not stupid today? Who are you calling Yundong? Why are you talking so strangely?" The village chief was even more surprised. He widened his eyes and looked at Gu Yundong. Madame Zhang asked excitedly, "Gu girl, he seems to know your name. Do you know him?" As expected, there was an inside story. There was something new to hear. Gu Yundong replied coldly, "I don't know him." As she spoke, she was about to help Madame Yang into the carriage again and leave. She was unwilling to look at Fu Ming again and even stopped taking the small jar of pickled radishes. However, how could Fu Ming let her go? He immediately stood in front of her and said bitterly, "Yundong, I'm your uncle. How can you not recognize me? Look at me. I doted on you when we were at Yongning Prefecture. Now that I'm in trouble, you can't leave me behind." "Uncle?" Everyone was stunned. Their gazes immediately focused on Gu Yundong and her mother. They actually had such a relationship. Chapter 245. Targeting Madame Yang. Gu Yundong almost laughed out of anger. She looked at Fu Ming. "Who's my uncle? You? My aunt is gone and you've married someone else. What kind of uncle are you?" Everyone understood. She turned out to be a relative of Fu Ming's late wife. Speaking of which, they were not connected now. However, if this uncle had indeed taken care of her in the past and treated her well, she could not be so heartless as to pretend not to know him. However, the village chief did not think so. He was smart and had interacted with Gu Yundong before. From her attitude towards her mother, he knew that she was not an ungrateful person. Now that her attitude towards Fu Ming was so bad, there might have been a huge conflict in the past. Moreover, Gu Yundong had stayed at his house for a night. How could she be being blocked at the door? Hence, the village chief waved his hand. All right. Why are you people so glib-tongued? How do you know if they were really close in the past? You keep muttering endlessly. You can't even settle your own matters properly, yet you still have the mood to care about other people's matters." Fu Ming panicked when he heard this. He thought that the village chief would stand on his side on account that he was from the same village. He planned to use public opinion to get Gu Yundong to bring him away. He had seen clearly that not only did the Gu family have a carriage, but they were also dressed so well. They were much better than Widow Sunday. They must have met a noble and led a good life. In Fu Ming's impression, Gu Yundong was an easy-to-deal-with young lady. Although he had been set up in the forest outside the Qing'an Prefecture last time, Gu Yundong had mentioned that Uncle Wang wanted to avenge his daughter. He had always thought that there was indeed an Uncle Wang hiding in the dark and working together with Gu Yundong. After all, Master Qian had died from a crossbow bolt shot from afar. Uncle Wang must have taught Gu Yundong. Otherwise, how could this 13-year-old brat be so scheming? "Yundong, you can't leave your uncle alone. Otherwise, what if your aunt comes looking for you in the middle of the night? You don't know how hard my life is now. I can't even sleep well without enough food and clothes." As he spoke, he looked at Madame Yang. "Take me away. I can help you take care of your mother. Look at your mother now. You don't have a father, and no one will want your mother in the future. Although I've injured my brain, I can be cured. At that time, your mother will have someone to rely on, and you can also have someone to rely on. Think about it, isn't that right?" Fu Ming had always known that Madame Yang was quite beautiful. In the past, because she had to work in the Gu family, she did not dress well. Her face was sallow and her fingers were rough. Therefore, he felt that although she was good-looking, She was still not as good-looking as Gu Qiuyue. However, now that he looked at Madame Yang, who had already cleaned up, he actually felt that Gu Qiuyue was a little ugly. Compared to Widow Sun, the difference was like heaven and earth. Even if there was something wrong with her brain, she looked good, right? But Gu Yundong was infuriated by his words. Not only was he shameless, but he also dared to have designs on her mother. The surrounding people were stunned when they heard this. Fu Ming had a wife. At this moment, no one noticed Gu Yundong. Hence, she rushed forward and raised the wooden stick in her hand to hit him. Even a toad wants to eat swan meat, it has to see what it is. I don't even want to look at you. My little aunt will come to look for me in the middle of the night? Let her come. It'll make her soul dissipate. Do you believe me? Chapter 246. Madame Yang takes action. Gu Yundong was merciless. Everyone was stunned. This young lady was so young, but she was so cruel. Madame Jiang watched her attack excitedly. However, as the village chief's wife, she still stopped her when she saw her fellow villager being beaten up. However, no one could stop the invincible Gu Yundong, especially after what she had said. Just listen to it. She wasn't even afraid of ghosts and deities, but she wanted to destroy little Aunt's soul. How much hatred did she have? Fu Ming dodged left and right, screaming in pain as he spoke. Help! Hurry up and stop her. She's crazy. She's just like her mother. She's crazy. As he spoke, a villager with a hoe came over. He quickly went forward and snatched the hoe from him. He turned around and smashed it on Gu Yundong's head. You don't know what's good for you. Then go to hell. Gu Yundong sneered. She dodged the attack and hit his leg with a stick. Fu Ming gasped in pain, and the hoe hit her even harder. Seeing that someone was about to die, the village chief hurriedly called for everyone to stop him. What are you waiting for? Separate the two of them. Everyone instantly rushed forward. Because Fu Ming's hoe was even more dangerous, the villagers went to catch him first to prevent him from smashing a bloody hole in the little girl's head. At this moment, Gu Yundong hit him hard between his legs. Everyone was speechless. Felt so painful. All the men present subconsciously clamped their legs together and gasped, their faces turning pale. Fu Ming's hoe had also been taken away by the original owner. He could only hold a certain spot and roll on the ground in pain. He was already in such a miserable state, so naturally, no one went to catch him. They even took 2 steps back, feeling that it didn't hurt so much anymore. Gu Yundong was also held back by Madame Jiang and the others. A woman reprimanded her. What's wrong with you, girl? You're so ruthless. You hit someone with a stick and even hit their crotch. How old are you? You're too shameless. F***CK. Where did this B***TCH come from? Gu Yundong suddenly turned her head and glared at that person. The woman was so frightened by the coldness in her eyes that she let go and took a step back. However, when she thought about it, she felt indignant. This was her village. What was going on if she was frightened by a 10-year-old girl? Why are you glaring at me? Am I wrong? No matter what, he's still your elder. Didn't you? The woman didn't dare to say anything else. In the end, she muttered and left. Fu Ming is right. Look at how fierce she is. She's a lunatic. The others did not dare to say anything. Madame Jiang quickly comforted her. All right. It was that Fu Ming who spoke nonsense. He's not clear-headed. Don't mind him. Gu Yundong did not want to argue with him. Wasn't she going to pretend that she did not know him and leave when she saw him this time? But this B***TCH insisted on coming to find trouble. Was it her fault? Gu Yundong was stopped, and no one was beside Fu Ming. Therefore, no one noticed that a figure had passed by with a stone and smashed it towards Fu Ming's head. Who asked you to bully Dong Dong? Ah! Fu Ming grunted and fell silent. Everyone was stunned. Gu Yundong's eyes widened. Mother? She broke free from everyone's grip and quickly went forward to hug Madame Yang. Madame Yang looked at the bloody hole in Fu Ming's head and her mind went blank for a moment. It was only when Gu Yundong came over that she threw the stone away and said, Dong Dong, don't be afraid. Mother will protect you. Chapter 247. My mother was just protecting me. Gu Yundong's eyes were hot as she stroked Madame Yang's back. Yes, I'm not afraid. As she spoke, she glanced at Fu Ming with a cold gaze, but she still stood up calmly and shielded Madame Yang behind her. Everyone finally reacted. The village chief's expression changed drastically as he shouted, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and get a doctor. The two of you carry Fu Ming in first." The incident happened at the entrance of the village chief's house, so they naturally carried the patient to his house first. Gu Yundong and Madame Yang were also surrounded. With such a thing happening, they definitely could not leave. Although Fu Ming had only been in Fugui village for a few months, he had married widow son and could be considered a member of Fugui village. The outsider had injured someone from Fugui village, so she had to give an explanation. Moreover, this explanation could not be low. Now, even the village chief and Madame Zhong could not stand on her side. Gu Yundong and Madame Yang were invited back to the village chief's house. The village chief asked someone to watch them and see how Fu Ming was doing before making a decision. The doctor in the village was quickly invited over. He checked Fu Ming. Fortunately, he was still alive. Madame Yang was not very strong, and the stone was about the size of a fist. Although it had a sharp edge, it was not fatal. It was just that there was a lot of blood. It looked very scary. However, he had been unconscious all this time. They did not know what would happen. The doctor applied medicine, performed acupuncture, and bandaged him. It depended on the situation. What if he suddenly died? Madame Zhong heard the doctor's words from outside and quietly went out. She ran to the house where Gu Yundong and her mother were locked up. She said to the villager watching over them, "I came to ask them for the money for the treatment." The villagers let her in. When Madame Zhong entered, she saw that Gu Yundong had a calm expression and still had the energy to patiently comfort the uneasy Madame Yang. She sighed in her heart. This Gu girl was really not an ordinary girl. No wonder she dared to take her mother, who knew nothing, on a long trip alone. Unfortunately, although Madame Yang loved her daughter, she still got into trouble. She quickly walked to the two of them and met Gu Yundong's smiling face. Suddenly, she felt that there was nothing to worry about, so she whispered about Fu Ming's situation. Gu Yundong nodded, indicating that she understood. Madame Zhong looked at Madame Yang again and whispered, "If your mother is like this and you encounter such a thing again in the future, she'll probably be a burden." "My mother is fine, Auntie. She's just protecting me." At this moment, Gu Yundong had completely forgotten the thought of not allowing Madame Yang and the other two to drag her down when she first came to this world. Now, be it Madame Yang or Yunshu and Yunka, they had already become her family and responsibility. She would protect them. Even if Fu Ming really died today, she would not let anything happen to her mother. Madame Zhong suddenly felt inexplicably envious of Madame Yang. If she became stupid one day and lost her mind, she would bring trouble to her children. Would she have the same treatment as Madame Yang? It was said that there was no filial son in front of a sickbed after a long time. For example, A Guang from their village was a famous filial son in this area. However, his mother was sick and could not take care of herself. He became impatient and went home. As she was thinking, she suddenly heard a sharp voice from the door. Madame Zhong's expression changed slightly. She quickly stood up and reminded Gu Yundong, "Widow son is here." "No, she's not a widow anymore. She's Fu Ming's current wife. He'll go out and take a look." Chapter 248. Gu Yundong is easy to bully? Madame Zhong went out and saw widow son walking towards Fu Ming's room impatiently. "What's going on? I heard that my husband was beaten up." His head was split open. "Who beat him up? Get someone to come out and talk to me." Widow Sun was a shrew, but she only went to the bed to take a look at Fu Ming before quickly looking away. Fu Ming was indeed good-looking. Back then, she had taken a fancy to his appearance and thought that he had fled to this place. He did not have any relatives or friends and did not even have a place to stay. If she was married to him, she would not have parents-in-law. She could still be in charge at home. She was also familiar with the village. Although Fu Ming was silly from time to time, didn't the doctor say that he could be cured? But, cure my ass. No matter how good-looking Fu Ming was, He could not take care of himself for 2 out of 3 days. His clothes were dirty, and his snot was all over his sleeves. No matter how good-looking he was, she was disgusted. Widow Sun felt that there was not much hope for him to be cured and did not want to care about him at all. But he was her man after all. Weren't they bullying her by beating him up in the village? Village chief. I heard that the person who hit her was from another village? This outsider has already bullied our village. You can't let her off. Do you think there's no one in our village? She even dares to hit someone in front of you. Who does she think she is? The village chief frowned. Madame Zhong walked over and said, "You can't say that. Your Fu Ming was the one who caused this trouble first. She came to our village to stay for the night and was about to leave early in the morning. However, your Fu Ming insisted on stopping her. His words were unpleasant, like a lecture. No wonder she was infuriated." The village chief pulled her back. After all, the person who was injured now was from his own village. As the village chief's wife, how could she stand on the side of outsiders? What would the villagers think of him? Madame Jiang snorted, but she did not say anything else. She just did not like Widow Sunday. In the past, she even wanted to seduce her man. Who did she think she was? The village chief coughed lightly and said, "The person who hit him is now in the West Wing. This matter indeed needs to be discussed properly. However, both sides are indeed at fault. Although I'm the village chief of Fugui village, I have to be reasonable." Widow Sun turned around and left. After leaving the room, she looked around. Seeing that there were 2 familiar villagers guarding outside the door, she walked over in a few steps. The 2 villagers did not stop her. Widow Sun pushed the door open and entered. Gu Yundong looked up and saw Widow Sun's expression. She knew why Fu Ming was so anxious for her to take him away. She was ugly, really. She was especially burly. When she walked, the flesh on her face trembled. Gu Yundong felt that it was a little painful to look at her. No wonder she wanted to find someone like Fu Ming. She probably had no other choice. When Widow Sun arrived, she had heard that the mother and daughter were the ones who hit her man. The younger one was only in her teens, and the older one had a problem with her brain. Fu Ming's head was smashed by that big one, but it didn't look like she had much strength. Otherwise, he would have been smashed to death. Widow Sun smiled in satisfaction when she saw the 2 of them. Alright, it was obvious that these 2 people were easy to bully. She turned around and was about to close the door. The 2 villagers looked at each other and quickly said, "Auntie Sun, why don't we ask the village chief to make a decision?" "What decision? This is between our families. They smashed my man. He'll talk to them about compensation. Don't be a busybody. Get lost." She pushed the 2 of them away abruptly and closed the door. She even deliberately bolted it. Chapter 249. Blackmail. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes at her. Widow Sun had a scheming smile on her face. Her eyes were narrowed into a line, as if a lump of fat had been pressed into a crease. Widow Sun walked around the mother and daughter. Gu Yundong was not afraid of her, but Madame Yang closed her eyes and hugged her daughter tightly. Widow Sun was even more satisfied when she saw her like that. Seeing that the atmosphere was about right, she brought a stool over from the side and sat opposite the 2 of them boldly. She slanted her eyes and said, "I heard that you injured my man severely. That won't do. He's the only strong laborer in my family. The doctor said that he'll have to lie in bed for at least half a year with his injuries. Without him in this half a year, how can we live?" Gu Yundong found it funny as she comforted Madame Yang. That was not what Madame Jiang had told her previously. "Then how do you want to resolve it?" Widow Sun chuckled. "Of course you have to pay some money." She knew that this mother-daughter pair had driven a carriage over. Although her family's conditions were not bad, they could not bear to use money to buy a carriage. At most, they would buy 2 caddies of meat to eat. Looking at what the 2 of them were wearing, although it was not silk or anything, it was still beautiful. Widow Sun was already thinking about how much they should compensate. "Let me tell you, this is Fugui village. The old and young masters of Fugui village are all united. We definitely won't allow outsiders to bully the villagers. You injured my man so badly today. Without my approval, you won't be able to leave this village. I'm not that unreasonable. As long as you talk nicely and apologize, compensate and satisfy me, you can leave safely. So, let's calculate now how much silver you have to compensate. Gu Yundong did not say anything and allowed her to speak. Look, my man is a capable man. He's the head of the field and can handle small businesses. Therefore, in half a year, he can at least earn 20 to 30 taels of silver for the family. Let's take the middle amount and treat it as 25 taels. This 25 taels can't be reduced at all. How about this? I think that the carriage will be worth 5 taels of silver. After all, it's already old. Other than this, there's also my man's medicinal money. He has to be nourished after losing so much blood. At least a chicken will be stewed every 5 days. It's at least 50 taels of silver here, don't you think? Gu Yundong smiled. That much? Not much. From the looks of it, you can take out 70 taels of silver, right? Widow Sun's expression became fierce. You almost took my man's life. If this family doesn't have strong labor, it will also take my life. Aren't 2 lives worth 70 taels of silver and a carriage? Or do you not want to leave this village? Madame Yang was shocked by her sudden raised voice. Gu Yundong hurriedly patted her shoulder and looked up into Widow Sun's eyes. Speak softer. You're too noisy. Hey, I'm talking to you nicely. You don't know what's good for you, do you? As Widow Sun spoke, she reached out and pushed Madame Yang's shoulder. Do you believe that it'll beat you up, break your limbs, and throw you into the pond? Gu Yundong's face darkened. She let go of Madame Yang and stood up, pushing Widow Sun away. You little girl, you're courting death. Widow Sun rolled up her sleeves and slapped Gu Yundong's face. Chapter 250. Counter Blackmail. Gu Yundong kicked her knee. Widow Sun stumbled and fell to her knees. Gu Yundong took the opportunity to cover her mouth to prevent her from calling out to the person at the door. Then, she kicked her twice and placed a dagger on her neck. Widow Sun held her breath. She had wanted to grab Gu Yundong's hand but did not dare to move. The dagger was cold and sharp. If she had moved a little, her neck would have bled. At this moment, there was a knock on the door and Madame Jiang's voice. Widow Sun, don't mess around. Come out and talk. Auntie, we're fine. We'll go out in a while. Gu Yundong spoke first. She let go of Widow Sun's mouth and wiped her saliva on her clothes in disdain. She said to Widow Sun, who was about to say something, Don't scream. If you scare me, my hands will tremble uncontrollably. Widow Sun wanted to nod, but she did not dare to. She could only say softly, You don't be rash. Killing is illegal. You will go to prison. Think about it. You're still so young. If you go to the prison, it will be difficult for you to get married in the future. Gu Yundong nodded seriously. Isn't that so? So eat this. Before Widow Sun could understand what she was saying, she felt as if something had been stuffed into her mouth. Gu Yundong's knife approached and she lifted her chin. She swallowed it. Then her eyes widened. What did you feed me? Poison my lisu. Omnipotent medicine. Gu Yundong had already moved the dagger away. Widow Sun hurriedly bent down and grabbed her throat. She vomited for a long time, but her face was red and she could not vomit. She looked at Gu Yundong with reddened eyes. You want to kill me? Of course not. I have no grudge against you. I was just frightened by you. I was afraid that the villagers would not let us leave, so I could only poison you first and treat you as a hostage. When we leave, I will naturally tell you the way to detoxify the poison. Widow Sun opened her mouth and wanted to call the people outside, but she was afraid of death. What if she angered this person and this person didn't tell her how to detoxify the poison? Gu Yundong looked at her expression and confirmed that she was a person who was very afraid of death. Previously, when Chong Fu was fed with my lisu, he would at least be suspicious. Took her a few scares to bend him. However, when she said that it was poison, the one in front of her immediately believed her without any doubt. Widow Sun glared at Gu Yundong angrily. I didn't expect you to be so vicious at such a young age. We're outside. If we're not vicious, wouldn't we be bullied by you just like before? Gu Yundong squatted in front of her. Now, It's time to talk about my compensation. What compensation do you want? Look, we were supposed to leave early in the morning, but your man stopped us and delayed us. My time is very precious. You have to compensate me. He even went crazy and wanted to smash me to death with a hoe. I'm still so frightened that my heart is beating wildly. You have to compensate me. Also, you threatened and pushed my mother just now, scaring her. You must compensate for that too. I'm kind-hearted and don't want much. Just take out all the silver on you. She couldn't possibly go to Widow Sun's house. She didn't have the time. Widow Sun did not want to give it to her, but she was poisoned. When Yundong said that the poison would act up in half an hour, she hurriedly took out the silver from her sleeve. Yundong frowned and looked at the 5 taels of silver in her hand. What else? No, that's all. I'll get it right away. 1. Chapter 251. Fu Ming wakes up. Yundong saw her sitting on the ground, pressing down on the fat on her stomach. She took off her shoes with some difficulty and took out a banknote worth 5 taels from under her shoes and handed it over. Yundong was speechless. Damn it, her eyes hurt from the smoke. Madame Yang quickly went forward and covered her nose. Dong, come here. She's releasing poison. Yundong felt that her mother's words were very vivid. She immediately waved her hand. Keep it well. I don't want it. It was too smelly. There was nowhere to put it. Widow Sun hurriedly stuffed the banknotes back into her shoes and put them on. Yundong frowned. She had spent so much effort and wasted one of her Mylisu pills, but she had only received 5 taels of silver. Widow Sun glanced at her. You can give me the antidote now, right? What are you thinking about? Yundong snorted. Get up. Go out and tell the others to let us go. When we leave safely, we will naturally tell you the way to detoxify the poison. Widow Sun was angry, but she did not dare to say anything. She did not know if it was a psychological effect. She felt that her body was in so much pain. Could it be that there would be other pain before the poison acted up? She did not dare to delay and hurriedly got up to open the door. Just as the 2 people at the door were wondering why there was no movement inside, they saw Widow Sun come out with a dark expression. The village chief and Madame Zhong were also outside. Seeing her come out, Madame Zhong hurriedly entered the house to take a look. Yundong was bringing Madame Yang out. Seeing that the 2 of them were fine, she heaved a sigh of relief. On the other side, the village chief was lecturing Widow Sunday. I've already said that I'll handle this matter. Why are you adding to the mess? Since you don't care about me as the village chief, don't look for me in the future. Widow Sun quickly smiled and said, No, I was just thinking that this is a small matter. I'm looking for them to discuss how to resolve it. Look, it's settled now. We've already agreed. Village chief quickly let them go. I heard that they're in a hurry. The village chief. What the hell? Madame Zhong was speechless. Was Widow Sun trying to seduce her man again? She was smiling so fawningly. She glared at Widow Sun and hurriedly asked Yundong. She didn't bully you? Yundong shook his head. No, Auntie Sun is still very reasonable. We told her what happened and apologized. She especially understood that it was not easy for us 2 weak women. She knew that we have urgent matters to attend to, so she said that she would explain to you personally and not pursue the matter. Widow Sun could not help but tremble. Apologize? Weak women? This brat was too good at acting. Madame Zhong had a complicated expression. Was Widow Sun a reasonable person? Yundong nodded affirmatively. That's right. It's already been half an hour. If we don't leave now, we won't be able to make it to the next town. Madame Zhong was puzzled. They had delayed more than half an hour, right? However, when Widow Sun heard that, she suddenly became anxious. That's right. 2 women can't sleep in the wilderness. It's not safe. Let them hurry up. Otherwise, if the people outside know, they will think that our village is bullying them and won't let them go. The village chief felt like he had seen a ghost. Why did he feel like he didn't know Widow Sun? But Fu Ming isn't awake yet. As a victim, he couldn't possibly not know anything, right? As soon as he finished speaking, a villager shouted, He's awake! He's awake! Fuming is awake. Village chief, go and take a look. Chapter 252. Departure. The village chief hurriedly went in to take a look. The others also went over one after another. Yundong did not really want to go, but Madame Zhong dragged her there. There were 2 thick layers of bandages on Fu Ming's forehead. At this moment, he opened his eyes and looked at the person standing by the bed. In the end, her gaze landed on Widow Sunday. Widow Sun frowned. This bastard had better not cause trouble at this time and not let the Gu family's mother and daughter leave. She still had to detoxify the poison. In the next moment, Fu Ming suddenly curled his fingers and chuckled. Wife, I'm hungry. Everyone saw that he had become a fool again. They couldn't ask for his opinion now, so Widow Sun had the final say. Since she did not mind and there was nothing wrong with Fu Ming, they could not hold on to 2 weak women. Besides, it was indeed Fu Ming who provoked her first. She was about to leave, but he insisted on stopping her and saying something inappropriate. The villagers left one after another. Widow Sun was very anxious. She asked Yundong, "You guys should leave quickly too." "All right, we're leaving soon." They had indeed wasted a lot of time. Today they were going to speed up again. Seeing that there was no problem, Madame Zhong quickly carried the small jar out to her. "Here, take it. If you pass by here again in the future, I'll marinate another jar for you. It won't take much effort." "Thank you, Aunt." Yundong had left a small bag of white sugar in the house. The village chief and Madame Zhong treated them well. Even if such a thing happened, they did not speak ill of them. Madame Zhong even tipped them off and helped them criticize Widow Sunday. White sugar was indeed expensive outside, but this was the most she had now. It was not shabby to give it away. Widow Sun was extremely anxious. Why was he still talking at a time like this? Was there no end to it? Madame Zhong glanced at her suspiciously, but Yundong smiled and got into the carriage. Widow Sun had been following beside the carriage. When Madame Zhong could no longer see them, she asked, "Where's the antidote? Do you think I'm stupid to give it to you without leaving the village?" Yundong sat on the shaft of the carriage and said slowly, "Wait here for half an hour. When the time comes, I'll write a method to detoxify the poison and place it under the second tree at the entrance of the village. I'll press it with a rock." "But I can't read." "Can't you find someone you know to read to you? Anyway, it doesn't matter if others see the antidote." Widow Sun could only stop in her tracks. "You have to keep your word." "Of course. You've already let me go. Wouldn't I be courting death if I harmed your life again?" Yundong shook the reins and the carriage immediately sped up. Widow Sun paced back and forth for a while before she could not take it anymore. She could not wait for more than half an hour. It did not take long for her to catch up. When she reached the village entrance and found the second tree, she saw a note. Widow Sun quickly took it out and rushed to the village chief's house. Madame Zhong was tidying up the guest room when she saw the bag of white sugar. She took it out to study it with the village chief. "What the hell is this?" "I don't know." Madame Zhong shook her head, then suddenly slapped her head. By the way, there was a small note under it at that time. Take a look at what was written on it. The village chief quickly took it and read with narrowed eyes. "White sugar. You can make sugar water or use it as a seasoning to make sweet food. Thank you for your hospitality." Madame Zhong was delighted. White sugar. The Gu family's girl gave us white sugar? So white. It must be very expensive. Before she could finish speaking, Widow Sun's noisy voice came from the door. Madame Zhong hurriedly put away the white sugar and covered it under the blanket. The next moment, she saw her barge in. The village chief's expression was ugly. "What do you want now?" Chapter 253. Completely crippled Widow Sun was panting. She did not care about his expression and hurriedly took out the paper and handed it over. "Quick! Help me see what's written on it." The village chief took it impatiently. "Ha!" he said. The words on it were written with charcoal, just like the note Madame Zhong had brought just now. He raised his head and glanced at Widow Sun strangely. The latter was extremely anxious. "Why are you looking at me? Hurry up and read it. Can't you be a little nicer when you're begging?" The village chief snorted and began to read the words on it. "My Lisu, It's a candy. Tastes great. Take it as a snack and drink more water, and it will keep you in good health. You have to admit that you're too old. If you're sick in the head, treat it quickly. See you again. He chuckled. Who wrote this? It's quite poetic. Widow Sun's face was ashen, and her fingers were trembling. However, she still asked unwillingly, That's all? Is there nothing else? That's it. B asterisk TCH, big B asterisk TCH, little b asterisk TCH, you actually lied to me. You actually lied to me. Widow Sun snatched the paper from the village chief's hand and tore it into pieces. She was still angry and stomped on it a few more times, almost creating a hole in the village chief's soil. The next moment, she suddenly raised her head and asked with a grimace, Who are that mother and daughter surnamed Gu? Where do they live? Where are they going? The village chief frowned. How would I know? How could you not know? Madame Zhong said angrily, Be reasonable. She's only here to stay for the night. She left immediately after the night. Why would she tell us these things? Ah! Widow Sun screamed, turned around, and ran out. She had to ask Fu Ming. Fu Ming must know where the mother and daughter lived in Yongning village. He must know. Widow Sun waited for Fu Ming to wake up, but after that, Fu Ming never woke up again. Later on, Widow Sun found out that he was not even a man. She was so angry that she smashed more than half of the pots and pans in the kitchen. That day, the doctor was only in a hurry to help Fu Ming look at the wound on his head. At that time, the blood flow was so shocking that even the surrounding people forgot that he had been hit by Gu Yundong in the crotch. When Fu Ming woke up, he became a fool again. He only felt uncomfortable down there and didn't know how to say it. As a result, he delayed the treatment and became a cripple in some aspect. Widow Sun couldn't take it anymore and chased Fu Ming out. However, even though Fu Ming was retarded, he still remembered Widow Sun's house. He could find it himself. He even became irritable. If Widow Sun chased him away again, he would hit her. Then Widow Sun starved him and kept him cold. She tried to trick him into leaving Fugui village. Then, Fu Ming came back and continued to hit her. The two of them repeated this cycle, and the days became more and more difficult. Gu Yundong left Fugui village in a good mood. Madame Yang also smiled and came out to sit on the shaft of the carriage. She held her hand and said, Dong Dong is so awesome. Mother is also powerful. Gu Yundong turned her head. But don't rush to the bad guys in the future. Fu Ming fell to the ground and did not have the ability to fight back. If you encounter someone who fights back, Mother will be injured. Madame Yang didn't know if she understood, but she tilted her head and suddenly pointed into the distance. We've been there before. Gu Yundong followed her finger and saw that she had been here before. Back then, they had also passed by here when they were pulling the pushcart from Qing'an Prefecture to Xuanhe Prefecture. After walking for another 5 to 6 days, the carriage finally arrived at Qing'an Prefecture. Chapter 254. Dr. Song is here. The last time they came to Qing'an Prefecture, they did not enter the city gate. This time he did, but the prefectural city here was much more desolate than the Xuanhe Prefecture. Couldn't be helped. It hadn't been long since the chaos last year. It was said that not only was the prefecture magistrate killed in the Qing'an Prefecture, but many of the wealthy and influential people in the city had also become fat meat for those bandits. They directly barged into other people's residences to kill and snatch. The civilians were even more in trouble. Those who dodged quickly escaped, but those who did not could only be killed when they encountered those inhumane bandits. The refugees only snatched things, but it was also easy to get into conflicts. Many of them were killed or injured. That chaos had caused the Qing'an Prefecture to suffer heavy losses. Gu Yundong led the carriage all the way and saw that many shops on the street had been destroyed and had to be renovated. There were many stalls along the way. Gu Yundong bought some food for Madame Yang and inquired about the location of Huimin Medical Center. Huimin Medical Center seemed to be quite famous. Soon, someone pointed ahead and said, "Walk to the end here and turn left. You'll reach it after walking for a while." Gu Yundong thanked him and sped up. She did not know if Dr. Song was in Qing'an Prefecture. She hoped that he had already arrived and that he had not left. When they arrived at Huimin Medical Center, Gu Yundong saw that there were many people waiting outside. A waiter saw her and quickly asked her to park the carriage at the side before queuing up. Gu Yundong saw that her carriage was blocking the way, so she quickly led it to the side and parked it. Then, she brought Madame Yang to the shop assistant's side. "Little brother, I'm looking for the shopkeeper of your medical center." The waiter was stunned for a moment. He looked at Gu Yundong, who was half a head shorter than him. "Little brother?" The shop assistant tried his best to ignore the way she addressed him. He coughed lightly and said, "Who are you? Why are you looking for our shopkeeper?" "I came from the Shuanhe Prefecture. Doctor, he introduced me." As he spoke, Gu Yundong took out a letter from his sleeve. "This is Dr. He's personal letter." The shop assistant knew that there was a Dr. He in the Shuanhe Prefecture. He had been here last time. He hurriedly led Gu Yundong inside. "Wait here for a while. I'll go look for the shopkeeper." With that, he took Gu Yundong's letter and ran to the backyard. After a while, the shop assistant came out. "Our shopkeeper invites you in. Follow me." Gu Yundong brought Madame Yang and followed the shop assistant into the backyard. The manager of Huimin Medical Center was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was holding a herb in the backyard and talking to a doctor. Seeing them come over, the shopkeeper asked the doctor to go to the front hall first. "I've read Dr. He's letter. I know why you're here." The shopkeeper let them sit. He glanced at Madame Yang and asked, "The patient is this madam, right?" Madame Yang hid slightly behind. Dr. He's letter was not very detailed. After all, he was not very familiar with Gu Yundong. He only asked the shopkeeper to help if he could. It would be good if he could fulfill Miss Gus' filial piety. However, if Dr. Song did not agree, he could not force him. The shopkeeper was just a middleman and a matchmaker. "Yes." Gu Yundong held Madame Yang's hand and asked anxiously, "Is Dr. Song in Qing'an Prefecture?" The shopkeeper saw her subtle movements and sighed in his heart. "Dr. Song is in Qing'an Prefecture. But what?" Gu Yundong quickly asked.